All right, now I think I'm good. All right, can you guys hear me all right? Maybe. Good. Thanks, Aaron. Congratulations on Twilight 2000 receiving of Aaron. Man, you know, sometimes this stuff is just a mess. Hello, everybody. Happy after Thanksgiving. Hope it was a peaceful one. Hope the relatives you invited over stayed away from sensitive topics. And that you weren't the drunk uncle. That would be the role that I would play. Actually, I didn't get drunk. And the weekend's not over yet, right? It's still early. Still early. All right. First thing I'm going to do is bring this up. Of course. First thing we're going to do is bring this up. Of course, I drank 2 sips of a vanilla Coke and I cannot clear my throat. Funny, weird. Lucas, good to see you. Aaron, Wayne, Larry. Well, snuck in here. All right. So this was in response to, there was actually, I got to start this on Discord, man. So people will be like, hey, man, what's up? You got to start this on Discord, dude. Let's see. Remy, Jeremy, good to see you. Let's see if I can, I don't know if, oh yeah, I do have sound, okay. Just want to make sure. Whoa, you guys don't need to see that. There we go. There we go. All right. So, for those that don't see this, this was a tweet in response to, hey, Jim, morning. William, morning. There was a tweet that was out there. I should probably try to find the original one, where a player character, I think I talked about this last week, played D&D for the first time, and they were captured. And the big bad evil antagonist, you know, rounded them all up, and the player character spit in the antagonist's eye. So the antagonist rolled a few attack rolls and killed the player character. And so the player was saying, is this typical? What's up with that? Blah, blah, blah. And was the game master justified in doing that? So a debate ensued. This came out, which probably, and I think the original was it on Twitter or Reddit? I can't remember. And so this person on Twitter, Riley Greik, tweeted, "Hi, are you a GM running a game when PCs are prone to death and you need a way to convey that if they do an action like, say, spitting in the face of a mob boss, that action might have dire consequences?" So they are referring, I think, specifically to that situation. because I think it was specifically a mob boss kind of thing scenario. And this person's introducing two simple mechanics: endangering actions and points of no return. And I thought, well, this might be interesting. Let's go through what Riley puts out there, shall we? It's a little bit of a thread, but I don't think it's too bad. So, you should probably be able to see that fairly well. And if you're not, that's all right. I'll read it. They continue: endangering actions and points of no return. But before we go into Riley's kind of coverage of this, he got a lot of likes. But I think we can all agree. What's up, Joe? We can all agree that a lot of this probably should be tackled in session 0 to some degree. Like, what are the expectations? How is character death handled? How lethal is your campaign going to be? Blah, 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 right? But again, session 0, it could fall apart. So, endangering actions and points of no return are easy game master check-ins with the party to confirm that the action they committed to is indeed the one they want to carry out, in spite of the risk they pose to the PC. They're a thing I started using recently, and each goes something like this. Endangering actions are things which may result in the PC receiving bodily harm or a negative consequence up to but excluding death. It will impose a harsh consequence on the PC, but not result in the permanent loss of their character's life. It could be limb loss, for instance. Okay. Got it. Meanwhile, points of no return are moments where the PC could lose it all. A major consequence where the loss of the ability to play that PC is likely should the PC fail to commit to that course of action. Death, soul trapping, and being converted to evil are all on the table here. Okay. Everybody following this so far? Dorigo? Catch up, buddy. So in play, oh, that's not really what I wanted to do here. Hold on a second. All right. So in play, this is easy to implement. Let's go with the mob boss example. Having established what these two terms mean in your session 0, hey, the PC says they spit in the mob boss's face. You as GM simply say, that's an endangering action. Do you still want to do it? That's it. That's it. That's as simple as they get, right? It's just a simple consent check, a way to double check with your players that's really what they do. Because listen, we've all experienced the moment at the table where someone jokingly says they want to do a reckless or dangerous thing, and it's a bad GM who will punish that. It's a game after all, and games are meant to be enjoyed. They don't have to be fun, though. Enjoyment and fun aren't the same. Yeah, sure. I think if you're having fun, you probably enjoy. You could probably enjoy and not have fun. I don't know. And there's few things worse for a table than a GM who automatically punishes players for that sort of table talk and joking around. It's not good. Well, that's true. You never know when your players are actually, like, they're alluding to on the level, right? You're just throwing it out there. Do you do that? How many times have we ever confirmed whether a player does what they actually say? Sometimes many of us do, like especially if it's completely preposterous, right? Is that what you do? Because you're not sure, they say with a deadpan face. So what would a point of no return look like? They continue. Well, let's say your party is about to launch a rebellion or go on a suicide mission into unknown space. For tension's sake, you could have the point of no return check-in be just before the last possible moment where they could turn back from it. The moment before the signal to ambush is given, or the ship makes the jump to space, pause and say, just so you know, this is a point of no return. If you commit to this, then you could briefly describe the potential outcomes or just remind them that they could all die from this. Okay. Another way to do this would be to mention the point of no return the first time the idea of the rebellion or suicide mission is brought up. As they're discussing it for the first time, chime in that the idea is, just so they know, definitely in point of no return territory if they end up failing it. So what is the point of endangering action and point of no return check-ins? They're consent checks. And if you have a problem with them, then I would urge you to play more video games because they've been using tools like these for literally decades now, some that are subtle even. What? Tabletop role-playing games learning from video games? Oh, preposterous. The blasphemy. Okay. I can evolve. I've gone beyond the ape. There's the obvious. Big ones like the ones you get in Mass Effect. Then there's the subtler ones like the save points and ammo refills before a boss or big fight that you get in JRPGs or things like Halo. If they're used commonly in video games, why can't we use them in tabletop role-playing games? And if you do want to make your game a hardcore survival mode where the PCs could die helpless to a mob boss or from lack of water, go into the game with the PCs understanding that. There are people who would enjoy that experience if it was clearly defined up front for them to be okay. Or for them to okay, I should say. It was clearly defined up front for them to okay. But we are long past, God, I cannot read again. But we are long past the days where punishing players without hesitation or a check-in, if that's really what they want to do, is acceptable. We make video games that check for player-informed consent and save states. There's no reason we can't do the same in our tabletop role-playing games. I leave it to you, GMs, role-playing gamers out there. Thoughts? I think it's good. It's really that easy. Isn't that crazy? It's just that easy. Sure you want to do that? And giving it a term and defining what that term is. Point of no return. This is a point of no return. This is an endangering action. Sure you want to do that? Oh. Well, hold on a second. Hold on, Sean. Like, I wasn't serious about that. Okay. So I make sure. Because if you want to do that, that's cool. But you could die. Now, I could see a player at the table arguing about it. Well, I don't think that, all I want to do is just it's like an effect. So I just spit in their face. I don't expect to die from it. I mean, man, what kind of game are you running here? Hey, I'm giving you a warning before you actually do it. Or you could play meat grinder mode. The meat grinder mode. Which I kind of somewhat appreciate. But you gotta have some people on the same page. That's the whole point of this thing, right? That's the whole point of this, is setting those expectations and understanding. Like, it's so what is the problem? The problem is I didn't know that would get my player character killed. If I had known that, Sean, I wouldn't have done it. Come on. You think I would have spit in the mob boss's face if I'd known they would just shoot me? Shoot my player character? Don't shoot me. Shoot my player character and kill me? Come on. Come on. Hey, you did it. You said you did it. That's what they would do. That's what a mob boss would do. They don't care for you. They don't have a need for you as much as you think they do, right? Because I think sometimes player characters go, they can't just kill my player. Like, they need me for the story. Like, if they just outright kill my character, the story ends. Well, the story ends for your character, maybe not for the rest. You got to roll up another one. Oh, that's not fair. It's totally not fair. Come on. Come on, I wouldn't have done this. All right, hold on a second. Okay, let's rewind it. Rewind it. Let's try this again. All right. They got you all bound up. Handcuffs, manacles, whatever. There's 3 or 4 capos, mobsters around you with armed guns. You know, you have no, there's no question that they are armed and willing to use their weapons. And my boss looks at you and says, hey, look, pal, you're going to do what I tell you to do. Now, somewhere we don't know the whole situation. We don't know what they talked about in session 0 about tone. We don't know how they pitched the lethality of the game or anything like that. We're just kind of going off what the player said. Hey, this is what happened to me. What the hell? And then we know what actions the GM took, but we don't know how the GM maybe conveyed those either, right, beforehand. Maybe the GM did sound off a warning, but the player didn't put that in their write-up. Who knows? It doesn't even matter at this point. The point is that the player character took an action. The GM reacted to that action with extreme prejudice, mind you, and shot him. Boom, bam. You're helpless. They made attack rolls, which a lot of people got bent out of shape about. Like, why would you roll attack rolls when the character is essentially helpless? It's like a coup de grace. It doesn't matter. That may be a valid question, but it doesn't really matter to the situation, right? Are you sure you want to do that? And the thing is with, are you sure you want to do that, is that it doesn't define the outcome. It doesn't convey to the player character how serious their action is to the situation. And I say serious as in, this could kill you, or, they're obviously going to rough you up probably, right? The player probably is like, yeah, I'm sure I'm going to get beat up by some of these guys. I'm going to take a lot of damage, blah, 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 blah. That's fine. I could take that. Okay, mob boss pulls out a pistol, bang, boom, pow, you're done. Let's see. Then you'll get some characters that'll be like, roll for damage. Oh, pistol does maximum 10 hit points. I could take that. I could take 10 hit points. Like, he's got what is he carrying? What's the mob boss carrying? Can I tell? What kind of pistol do they have? Sure, they have a whatever pistol. Player metagames looks at, knows what the damage is. I've got 20 hit points. The max the pistol can do is 10. I can survive this. Sure, maybe. So maybe the mob boss shoots them. They take 10 hit points. They're not dead. They're like, man, this guy won't freaking die. Everybody else shoot him. And bam, 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 bam. Like, it's inevitable, right? That's the goal, I guess, of the game master, is to teach this player character a lesson. And in these situations where, and it sucks because the players feel like they're getting their agency taken away from them, right? It's just if you haven't been a player on the opposite side of the ship is going down, there's nothing you could do. All your stuff is in the closet or Foot Locker, and the ship is going to be shipwrecked. And I try to get in a lifeboat. Oh, the lifeboats are smashed and crashed, and or you're surrounded by 50 men at arms. What do you do? Well, let's go. Roll for initiative. We all feel that helplessness that comes into play in some of those situations. And of course, as game masters, we have a particular goal. Now, a lot of people hate that goal, right? They will automatically go to this is the game master's story, and they have a story to tell, right? So some of us have said, hey, it sounds to me like the game master is a rookie game master. They have a story to tell, and you should run away. Maybe a valid point, maybe, especially if they've got an ongoing kind of track record for doing stuff like this. And if it's done all the time, yeah, then you got to kind of bail and call it a day. But every once in a while, there's a situation where our player characters, and let's even put something into context here. In all the adventuring you've ever done as a player character, whether it be fantasy, espionage, whatever, insert any genre, science fiction, superheroes, any movie or book, and there's usually a point in time where the hero is down. Right? They're taken prisoner, and eventually they break out somehow. They either take over the guards, they get rescued, maybe they just serve out their time in a prison or something, and they leave, and there's going to be a revenge component to it or whatever that is. But in role-playing games, man, people get really ticked off when they feel as though they are outnumbered and the odds are against them, and it's just there's nothing that they can do. They're defeated literally in a game where you can't lose, right? It's not hey, it's Monopoly, there's one winner and all the rest are losers. Second place gets a set of steak knives. So the piece of not doing that, not putting them in those situations or giving those player characters that, let's face it, every once in a while we want to just take the player characters and they get surrounded and they're all bound up and gagged and thrown in cages or whatever, because there may be a way to get them to the next thing. Maybe it is part of the story. Maybe there is a component of overcoming the huge obstacle. Because we could say that there's the story of triumph. There is the story of overcoming this major hurdle. But there's also times when we don't enforce this type of play, or we choose not to put this type of play in front of the player characters, which is okay. There's no wrong or right answer. But there's also times when the players can say, man, I don't need to save the world. Screw this shit. Why do I got to do this? What's my motivation? I don't need to hey, if you hear a cry for help, I pretend I don't hear it. I look the other way. I don't want to get involved. I'm minding my own business. I don't want to get entangled with all that crap. Why don't they want to get entangled in that crap? I could get taken prisoner. I don't know. Who knows? So it's a situation where you want to give players a challenge, and you want to put them in difficult situations so that they can devise ways to get out of them. And some would say, well, yeah, now the trick is if you do that and you take them prisoner or whatever, in this case of the mob boss, all the mobsters are around them and they're, why are they taking them prisoner without just shooting them outright and getting rid of them? And that's where I think the confusion comes in, where I think the player characters think their value to the story is higher than not being part of the story. So in other words, the mobsters aren't going to kill me. They need me. They need me, right? They're taking me prisoner. They're having me they're going to have me do a job because, they're extorting me for something, or, whatever the case. They're going to pay me a lot of money. So, they need me to do this. And it's the only way they would have got me into this situation is by throwing me in the trunk of a car and getting here so I could spit and act tough. And, I know that I'm invulnerable. But with this approach that the person on Twitter had put out there was, you can do whatever you want, right? And somebody says, Lucas says, but Sean, what about players' consequences? Let's say players' character consequences. And sure, you should play. I mean, that's kind of the way role-playing games roll in providing consequences to the player character's actions, right? If there's no consequences, then it gets really boring. Then you're just walking through on God mode. Sure, fun for a speed run if you want to roll that way, but it's not going to be fun. And frankly, I think there's a lot of people that will appreciate that to some degree, right? They don't mind it every once in a while, but if that's the theme of the game, there are a few people that will appreciate that and always want to play that way. But then, I think a majority of us don't care for that approach. I think a majority of us here listening and watching this is not, that's, we give them an easy out or whatever, and they can be invulnerable for a while. But going back to the player consequences, that's how the world rolls. You do an action. Based on that action, it could be good consequences. Doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. But by having consequences, it allows the players and the player characters to feel like what they do impacts the world in which they are interacting with, which I think is the huge key. That's the point. That's the takeaway here, right? For that piece. Farty McButterpants, are you sure you want to do that? We'll get a similar reaction to roll initiative. I like it. If you've been gaming a while, are you sure you want to do that? Is a huge red flag. For a new player, it may have held no real explicit warning. True, but I will say this with, are you sure you want to do this? I think in the players' minds, if you allow that and you put that statement out there, the problem with it is it can be relatively vague, right? We take it as a warning. I think most of us would, that if you've played role-playing games for a little while, you get you get acclimated to when the game master asks you that, something bad's probably going to come as a result of it. However, the level of bad is not, it's not clear, right? So are you sure you want to do that? Yeah, hell yeah, I'm sure of it. I'm going to take those 10 hit points from that pistol blow. I don't care. I can take it. Boom, boom, you're dead. I shot you twice. It's 10 points per round. Oh, I didn't think they'd shoot me twice. Well, yeah, there you go, genius. Phil, if you give the players the heads up at the start of the game that if you do something dumb or reckless, you could end up double tapped painting the walls, I say have at it. Yes, I agree. The problem with that and much of the discussion is that we don't know what that means. I mean, yes, you say, hey, if you do this, they're going to double tap you and you're going to paint the walls with them. We get that, sure. We convey that, but do we say that all the time? Do we every situation? Like, hey, here's the deal. With any time death is a possibility, is that kind of instilled in the players? Now, having said that, there's going to be groups. Like I know Phil's got a good game group, and I'm not talking about the one he's in with me. He's got his home group. He probably thinks our group is good too, but nonetheless, he has a home group that a lot of those things are already hashed out, right? They've all played together. So maybe, right? So some folks are going to look at this and read and listen to this and go, I don't get it. Like, what's right? This is a no-brainer. Yes. So in home groups that you've played with for 6 months, 12 months, 12 years, whatever, and they know you as a game master, and they know, like Brett would be a perfect example. Like, his group knows the deal. If he's going to have them roll save or die, now save or die is an interesting one because that's AD&D, and that probably hasn't come up in other games that they've played. You know, that's going to be part of the deal. Save or die, throw that out, right? Because that's kind of a rule specific to AD&D. Not all, but and it came up in his AD&D game, is what I'm trying to say. But, you know, his group may know that, hey, Brett doesn't, quote unquote, fool around, right? If there is a hostile situation and it gets escalated, there is a chance that my player character is going to get whumped up on the head and die. And Brett isn't going to be the one to pull any punches. Sure. So this discussion for people like Brett and his players, maybe for not, right? It doesn't make any sense. They could scratch their head and go, it's understood. It's an understood rule. It's like the subjective you in a statement. You is understood in some situations. But it's not all the time. And if you've got a player that's relatively new to the group, or you're playing with groups at a convention, or whatever, even if you've been playing through the BSers on their Discord and you're running a game, like even the Forbidden Lands group that I've been running with, God, what are we going on here? 8 months, 9 months? Is it a year? I don't even know. It's been a while. It's not 3 months or a couple weeks or 2 sessions. But I could still throw down the hammer and they may say, whoa, wait a minute, Sean, I didn't realize that this is the type of game that we're playing. Because those situations may not come up every session. So what happens is you roll 4 or 5 sessions and these situations don't present themselves. So you've been playing with each other for a while, but the situation that comes up that we're referring to, these, hey, you do this action and you're going to be dead, they don't happen every session. So then it is a surprise to some. And I would even go to say that even in some of Brett's games, even though he's got a player group that he's been gaming with for 20 years, 30 years, there's going to be one person at the table that completely misses that, because it's either going to be the game has changed, right? Literally, they're playing a different game. They go from AD&D to playing, I don't know, Knights Black Agents or whatever, Star Wars, and a situation that could have taken place in AD&D, a similar situation takes place in Star Wars, and Brett pulls the trigger. Brett would never run Star Wars, by the way, but Brett pulls the trigger and on a laser blaster and kills one of the player characters. One of those player characters would be like, wait a minute, I didn't think that was the game we were playing. Come on now, you've been playing with me for 20 years. You know the deal. Well, yeah. But that's AD&D. That's Call of Cthulhu. That's, all the games you typically run that are high lethality rates. So there is a chance that even if you run a game, like if you're playing D&D, I would say this, if you're playing like 5e or insert whatever game here, and you roll in a specific way as a game master, and your games are high lethality meat grinder mode, and the players should understand the methods of your approach, but you never change the game, and it's this ongoing campaign that's been on forever and ever and ever, then probably the argument of it should be understood can be made. Sure. Because the game hasn't changed. The system, the rules, the players, the GM hasn't changed. Everything remains a constant, consistent kind of approach where if the situation presents itself, the game master is going to always react in a particular way. Of course, that can change based on the players. Like, hey, I'm going to try to negotiate them. I'm a really great negotiator. This is my character's thing. That's my deal. Make a roll. Great. Awesome. Now Augie's here. Great. Fantastic. I like it. I don't know if I'll remember to use it all the time, but I like it. This is a point of no return. Okay. Got it, Sean. What does that mean? That means we could die, right? Not always, Wayne says, not always applicable, but introducing the mob boss with some basic PC knowledge is a good idea. Black Nose is known for smashing the thumbs of anyone who disrespects him, is the way Wayne would put it. And Phil says, I guess I have a hard time wrapping my head around all the fear of PC death. Not sure if it's because I've been playing for a long time when it was common or what, but a lot of people are hung up on it. Yeah. PC death. I don't know. I think I have to say, times have changed. Many of us that have played in games where you'd roll up 4 characters and you'd have one survive because you would hide them behind the other 3 because you wanted to play the thief, the fighter, the magic user, whatever. And hey, who's going to go through this door? Well, it's going to be PC number 2. I haven't even named him yet. All right, send in PC number 2. PC number 2 gets the axe. Hey, that's fine. This is the guy I want to have survive. That's the whole model of the funnel. That's the inspiration of the Dungeon Crawl Classics funnel. But as players take more time to invest in the game, they want to see, I think, in my opinion, Phil, they want to see a progression. And there can be a level of frustration that if every time you roll a player character and you get to second level, that you're always going to die. Now, if your group, you and the players all agree that that's kind of the way you want to go, great, super. It's when you get into the, 2 of the players don't care, and then 2 of the players do care. And then you have to kind of juggle that as a game master. And how does that even change the dynamic of the group, right? We had Gabe right into Gaming and BS last week where he didn't care if his player character died. He hey, not a big deal. I'll roll up another one, right? I like it when that happens for whatever reason. Like, I don't know if he likes it, but he would attribute it to part of this story. The only problem is that if you have other players that say, oh, now we got to rescue another one of Gabe's characters, and then that puts pressure on the other players to act based on what you are doing, and you don't care. That can create a schism between the players. It's kind of like, I'm gonna play a thief, and anytime I get the chance to steal something, that's what I'm gonna do. And if I get caught, hey, so be it. Tough. And if I get thrown in jail, hey, that's okay. I don't care. It's, that's my deal. That's my shtick. And then the rest of the party's always having to rescue your ass out of jail, right? Or get you away from the authorities. So they're putting their characters at risk to try to get you out. Now, I could say, no, you don't have to save me. You don't have to save me. It's not a big deal. Seriously. I'll take it out, and this is player to player. Hey, I take the risks and I get the reward, or I don't and I get thrown in the cell. Either way, I don't expect you to jeopardize your own player character's well-being in trying to help me out, blah, blah, blah. Then you get into the discussion, well, hey, I'm a friend of yours in-game. My player character is a close personal friend of yours. He or she's not going to let you rot in a jail cell because of what you've done, right? And frankly, if you role play it, you could say, I didn't do that. Maybe in the game, you you literally didn't, but the game master somehow got your character framed. So there's a whole storyline there. But those are discussions that you really got to have outside the game, even outside, like, okay, we're going to take a break here. Let's talk about this for a second. This is like the fourth character you've played as a thief that have gone off the rails, or a murdering asshole, whatever. You insert things that are going to have some heavy repercussions. Like, we talk about consequences. We're talking about heavy consequences where your character is going to be taken probably right out of the game. And if not forever, probably for an extended amount of time. Okay, can we agree on this? And so that propels the other players to have to react to that. So what are we going to do? Should we do this? I don't want to keep doing this all the time. So when that dynamic comes around, so if Gabe keeps doing it and everybody's fine with it, then what happens is it becomes almost more of a trope. Oh, Gabe created another thief. Whoa, shocker. Oh, it's not if, as I tap at my wrist, it's not if Gabe's character is going to get caught. It's just a matter of when. Oh, there it is. Hammer fell. Okay, well, roll up another one. We'll see you around. GM tries to wedge the next player character that Gabe creates, put that person into the story. So mileage may vary. It's things that we all have to deal with, but how do you want to deal with it? How do you deal with it currently? Do you even have that problem? Most of us could sit here and go, I don't even run into this. I can't remember the last time that this was ever an issue at my table, which is great. And probably because the expectations are probably pretty solid, both behind the screen and in front of it, right? Players versus the GM, like, they all understand, like, this is the way Phil rolls. If we do this, it's going to be bad news. If I spit in the mob boss's face, the guy's going to kill me. Still want to do that? It's already, so instead of saying, hey, if you do that, I'm going to kill you, it's understood. But without that understanding, that's where the, huh? Wait a minute. You want to play with no regrets? Good times. Good times. Farty says, I'm with you, Phil. Player death is just part of the game. I'm older, but I don't have a ton of RPG experience. Wayne says, I play with some folks who are great role players, but they look upon PC death as losing, failure, bad, wrong, fun. Yeah, well, the struggle is real, and I think it depends on who you're playing with and what their expectations are. If you say that in session 0, I mean, when's the last time I went to all the players in a session 0 and said, hey, what are your thoughts on player character death? Not player death. I don't want those thoughts. They should be bad. Hey, keep players alive, okay? This has been a public service announcement. But what is your take on character death? Well, a lot of us will say, as long as it's meaningful. As long as it's meaningful to the story, I don't have a problem with it. Your meaningful and my meaningful is different. For me, it's meaningful to kill your character. Maybe they become a martyr or whatever. Yay. Well, I didn't mean like that, Sean. I didn't mean like that. Like, you could have handled that differently. That's the problem with what we run into all the time. Like, all the problems we come up with, all these tweets, the podcast sessions, YouTube videos, it's all weird in misinterpretation, communication breakdown, like expectation level settings off. Hey-oh, corporate speak, throw it in there, right? That's where all these problems stem from. And even when we spell it out, we've got a legal contract in front of the player characters to read and take to their attorneys, and they read it over and they say, here's the deal. If you spit in a mob boss's face, this game master has the right to kill your character. Okay, sounds good. Sign it. They go to play. I spit in the mob boss's face. He kills you. What? What? It doesn't seem very meaningful. Hey, you knew the deal. I put it in the contract, man. Your attorney explained it to you. You signed off on it. Well, I know, but I didn't think you would really do it. Come on, seriously? Right? It happens. Oh, man. Jim, I agree. I don't really understand turning my PC died into I've been personally injured, even if I really like the character. There are bad GMs and groups, sure, but it's not always personal. Wayne says, so they avoid all games that have that as a feature. Quote unquote, he says, feature. Phil says, I would say PC death, unless you've made a sacrifice to save the group, it probably is a failure or loss, but that's okay. Sometimes when playing games, you lose. People have a hard time coping with loss. I think that says something about society today. Well, that's for sure. That's for sure. Oh, I'm going to kill him. See him back there? You can't see him, can you? Right there. My cat. Hey, get out of there. Ah, this guy. What's up, Roger? Good to see you. Wayne continues. Some folks play for power fantasy and or wish fulfillment, which is okay, but just lowers the stakes. What we're all saying here, I think we can all agree on, is I have a gaming preference. You have a gaming preference. They're not the same. Hey, nice knowing you. I'm going to go down there and play with the no kill shelter approach. Watch out for these guys. They're ruthless. I think that's what we're saying here, right? Killer GMs. You're all killer GMs. Like I should just get pictures of a bunch of people's emoticons, like avatars, and put it on a t-shirt and say killer GMs at the top. If you see any of these avatars on your Discord or forums, Twitter, this is how they roll. In favor of player character death. Be aware, you know. You guys, man. Yeah, you laugh, Farty, about my cat spraying him with water. I don't know why he comes down when I talk. I tell my wife, I'm like, this guy is driving me crazy. And she goes, no, he's a good boy. Because it's her cat. Like, that's her cat. It's our cat, but he and she are their buddies. And he's super nice when she's around. But man, in the morning, I give him food. Like right now, he's got food in the dish. I don't doubt it. I'll take him up there. Look, man, food. And he'll eat some of it. Because that's why he's trying to get my attention. But then there's food there. And then he comes down and wreaks havoc on me. Chews on wires. All kinds of crap. He jumped on the chair back there to chew on probably a role-playing book, which is, that's why I have my role-playing books literally in an armoire with like doors. Oh, he's such an asshole. Anyways, Wayne says in 99% of all our RPGs, death is just a cost of a player's time. Okay, come on now. Let's be empathetic for just a moment. We've all been players, probably maybe less than we've game mastered, maybe, depends, right? And some of us are like, yep, it's kind of the deal. It's part of the game. Hell, Dungeon Crawl Classics, it's the funnel. Christ, you're supposed, 4 of your player characters are supposed to die. Otherwise, if they all live, then you're in a lot of trouble. Or not, I don't know. But let's just say, for example, like I brought it up with Brett on a show, right? Brett was talking about, it was the Save or Die episode, and he brought it up because it was stemmed from this episode that he had with his player characters. I mean episode as in his role-playing session, where he's like, okay, here's the deal, save or die. What? Yeah. whatever happened to him, something bit the character or whatever. Save or die. If you don't make this roll, your character dies. And when I asked Brett, dude, what level was this character? And he said something like, I don't know, 7th, 11th, whatever. Anything in AD&D to me over 7th level is like a milestone. If the game master's kind of rolling it like they did back in the olden days, that is an achievement in and of itself. Like going through all the encounters, overcoming all the goofy traps, the mimics, the gotchas, save or dies, petrification, those things are, they bring characters' lives to an untimely death quite often in some of those games. And if you like playing that way, great. But let's just say you've spent a lot of time and effort in trying to make this thing work, and that you're really set out to say, that's the goal, right? Is to survive. It's really, in role-playing games, that's kind of the deal. That's the main objective. Like, hey, I want to go to start. Hey, it's Parcheesi. Hey, it's triple word score, blah, 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 blah. Like, surviving and having your player character, especially in level-based stuff, that's the end deal. Many of the times. Some of us will say, it's about the story, man, and creating a great story, Sean. Sure, that comes with it, but let's face it. The end goal is to have your character survive. Hey, another session's down. I lived. Woo! Some will say, no, it's to get more experience points and gold, and that's the deal. Well, sure, but it's, you can't, none of that matters if your character's dead. You could bury me with my gold and my cool boots, whatever. So let's just say, for example, this person really has gone to the ends of the world to really just make this to survive. And you spit in a mob's boss's face and they shoot and kill you. Now, some of us are going to say, "Well, you should know that." It just seems it seems trite, I think, at times when stuff like that occurs. So, when is the right situation and when is the wrong situation for killing a player character? So we still get the well, if it's at the end of the story, or hey, if it's heroic, or they're saving the whole group, then I think it's justified, and and I can hey, we survived because Sean sacrificed this wizard and cast this great spell and blew up the world, but we lived, whatever. Sure. I don't know. You just got to keep in mind that some folks don't, when they create a player character, they want to see the whole arc all the way through. They want to start with the pilot episode of the TV show, and they want to go through all the way to the freaking TV series finale. They don't want to get capped at the end of season 1 or season 2. They want to see the whole thing through. That's really what the player characters are doing. So it's not about... Now, somebody would say, but Sean, they could do that. They just have to make another character. They got to just make another character, Sean. We're not saying they can't play anymore. They just got to make another character. That's what everybody sounds like to me. Oh, I got to do it. Nobody says they're getting axed from the show, Sean. They just got to create a different character. Can you imagine a TV show where it starts out like that, and the player and the character looks like, looks like, if you're playing the game, they look like you. So they play in a TV show, the character looks like you, and then your character gets axed, and then they bring in another character that you play, and it's you. Use the same actor over and over and over again. Oh my goodness. Chat. All right. Phil says, for sure, regarding the 99% of all RPGs, death is just a cost of players' time. Phil says, for sure, play how you want to play. I'm definitely Skull and Bones Avatar. Phil says, I want that shirt, Killer GM. Oh, man. Jim says that Wayne, regarding the 99% piece, I think that's the disconnect that I have. Gaming is escapism, but my preference is still to have challenges and real fantasy risks, right? Real risks. Gabe, there he is. Local gamer once said of me, watch out for Gabe. He likes to kill characters. He likes to kill characters. Isn't that crazy? That's the crazy thing. Like, you kill one player character, a couple in a group and in a game, and it might be completely legit. And then all of a sudden, you become the killer GM. Be careful. Watch out for Gabe. He likes to kill characters. If you don't know who Gabe is, join our Discord. When he wants to run a 2D20 Conan game for you, or Against the Dark Master, there you go. You already know. That's Gabe's tagline. Watch out for Gabe. He likes to kill characters. Watch out. Look out for me. I like to kill characters. That should be on a t-shirt. I got a ton of t-shirts I need to create. I need royalties down to Gabe. I won't put Gabe's name on it, but I'll still give him a cut. Jim, not to pretend to be an unlikable superhuman. Wayne says, death, it's on the table. T-shirt. Table stakes. Table stakes just aren't meat. Isn't just meat for eating. Jim says, people come to the table with different expectations, and that's totally fine so long as the whole table is on board. Yeah. Joe, see you later, buddy, if you're still around. Have a good weekend. Harrigan. Oh, listen to this guy. Good morning. This is Harrigan, and I'm here to tell you you're all wrong. He's been listening on the Discord. He knows the deal. This is going to be good. He goes from Discord and listening over to YouTube chat to tell everybody they're wrong. Points for you, Harrigan. I'll get to that in just a second. Wayne says, so I have to say, I've heard GMs brag about being a killer GM. Not in a funny way. That too is not fun for me. I heard one GM brag about running a setting for years and no player getting over 4th level. He doesn't get that either. Yeah. So here goes Harrigan. Evidently, it's too early for me to type without errors. All right. Anyways, continues. Wayne says, oh, geez, there goes the neighborhood. VC, death is not the end of a character's arc in RPGs. It's not? You know, have him float around as a ghost, I guess, if that's the game you want to roll. Sure. I would say it doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be. He says there are too many different ways in almost every RPG that can be used to bring a dead body back. Sure. Yes, it is an option. But we're going to say that that's not. Like, if I kill your guy in Delta Green, they're dead. Yes, sure, but they could be possessed by some evil cultist thing, whatever thing. But that's not how I'm going to roll. Like, if I kill you, you're going to be dead. And that's another thing, too. One could argue, hey, you know, sure, Sean's a killer GM, but it doesn't last more than a few minutes. Just wait till you get to the next scene. Trust me, he'll bring you back. Trust me, okay? It's all good. It's just shock. This is your first time running with him? Trust me, it'll be fine. I've had 10 characters. This character, he's died 10 times. He's still alive. Don't let him fool you. Come on. Come on. Come on. Phil says that's Game of Thrones and arguably is the reason why it's so popular. VC continues, character death is only the end of the character if you want it to be. Who wants it to be? The game master? The game master wants it to be. Player? Maybe not so much. Here you go. Flip it. Gabe. We'll go back to Gabe. Picking on Gabe today. Gabe's like, hey, man, I'm good with my player character dying. Sacrifices his character. Game master says, no, you don't die. Get in front of the moving truck to push the innocent child out of the way. All right. Truck swerves right at the last minute, runs over your foot. Your foot is mangled, but you survive. Huh? Yeah. I think that would be hilarious. You don't let a player character die no matter what they do. They don't know it. I'm going to do that in my Forbidden Lands game. I think every player except Kevin's in the chat right now. So I'm just going to pick one of them at random. And no matter what they do, they don't die. Secret's out. Jig is up. Oh, man. So Harrigan says, is this convo focused on D&D and D&D-like games, or is it meant to encompass all RPGs? I would say there's the 500-pound gorilla, but I think it's for any RPG. I don't think we want to just limit to D&D. I think it is, maybe the biggest problem in D&D only because D&D is probably the biggest game. And I think with expectations in D&D, it may be different. Like, people in Call of Cthulhu may just you go insane and die. Like, they should just print that on the front cover of the book. It's such a cliche. So when you ask, are we just talking about D&D, Harrigan? I don't know if I don't know. Maybe, yes, maybe a majority, 75-25. I don't know if you want to split it, but regardless. But it is a good question. But I think this problem can be in any game that you run. In any game. It may be just more prevalent in D&D or fantasy-based, And I think when you say D&D, you did say D&D-like games, so maybe some of its derivatives. Jim says, Gabe hasn't killed any of my characters yet. Yeah, well then he's not living up to his reputation. Now I kind of wonder, come on. So when people say your reputation precedes you, but it's not valid. Come on. Repazinski, are you sure you want to do that? The RPG that needs to be written. Are you sure we want to do that? There's got to be some mechanical value behind that, right, Brett? Are you sure you want to do that? Get +5 every time you ask that. So Harrigan says, part of what drove The Forger and all the indie games that came from it is killer DMs. So if you're not familiar with The Forge, what he's referring to was a popular website. It's no longer around. And I can't remember one of the guys that founded it. He wrote Spione. Ron Edwards. Ron Edwards was one of the kind of co-founders of The Forge, and it spurred really the indie movement. And they really talked about the components of a role-playing game. And I mean not components as in you got the rolling component and this and that. I'm talking about the types of is it gamist? Is it simulationist? Is it, narrative? I think it's theory, GSN theory, essentially. And it was, dude, take wankery and turn it up to 12. Good stuff if you really appreciate it, but it is really getting into some of those details. And some of the most popular individually published games that are out there, Apocalypse World is one of them, probably John Harper and Blades in the Dark, a lot of those, Dungeon World, a lot of all Ron Edwards games, a lot of those were kind of making their way out, Jason Morningstar stuff, coming out of that Forge space. Okay. It was an online forum. And then they just closed it. When you get too big, who knows? But regardless, so when Harrigan talks about forgers, right, he talks about that particular site and some of the people that contributed to that site. For most RPGs, he continues, other than the D&D games, death is indeed the end of the line. Yes, most, right? So VC, you're not wrong, but nonetheless. VC continues on you can always survive. There are artifacts and many things in Delta Green that can bring the character back. That being said, in Delta Green, death is part of the story. Death of the character through gun, through heart, break, through mental breakdown. Yes. Sure. Yes. Look, here's the deal. Anything I say on here can absolutely be argued against. No question. Hey, this is the best way to play. No, it's not. When you do it, you should probably do this. I don't have to. You're absolutely right. So when I'm speaking to some of this stuff, it's very much the specific component at hand, right? Yes. Player character death does not have to be the end of every game anybody else runs and participates in. For the sake of argument and this particular topic and situation, we're just going to say character death is what it is. When you die, you're dead. Let's take his boots. What's on the character? Let me see your character sheet. I want this magic item. You can have this one. Death. Harrigan says, Tales from the Loop, modeling that kind of fiction. The kid protagonists don't die. Dread, you die when the mechanics tell you it's time to go. Yes, in those games, it's actually spelled out. In Tales from the Loop. Not from Tales from the Flood. Tales from the Flood, you can die. Tales from the Flood is when you play teenagers. Tales from the Loop is when you're playing kids, like preteens. Most of the time, probably up to 30. I think the 15 is like the oldest, if I'm not mistaken. Harrigan, correct me. All Fate games, PC death is something the player and GM agree on. Loads of current generation small press and indie games come from those ideas. And many of them, this is Harrigan, many of them just don't cover random PC death in the same way. Neither good nor bad, as Wayne says, but certainly there are a lot of games where random death just isn't present. I'll shut up now, but basically in session 0/1, just say PC death is on the line, be careful. Then use that "are you sure" strategy. I don't think it's that easy. I don't think it's that easy. I think this tweet, I really do. That is not the tweet. That is our Discord. But this is endangering actions and points of no return. Because I think when you say, are you sure you're going to do that? I don't know if the player understands. Harrigan's going to argue with me. It is that easy, Sean. Okay, fair. Maybe. I don't know. Oh, I think I just turned on a fan. I did. It can be that easy. But I really do think this has a valid approach. Endangering actions, points of no return. This is an endangering action. Like you could even put it in a session 0. Endangering actions include and are not, but not limited to combat. Extensive falls. You could go on and on and on and on and on and on and make the list. But if you say, hey, I'm going to spit in the mob boss's face, and you as a game master say, are you sure it's an endangering action? Not, are you sure you want to do that? Player death is on the table. Remember session 0. And don't mention endangering actions. And then you shoot and the player character dies. Player character's like, what? I didn't think, I understood that there were consequences. I understand that character death is a thing, but I didn't think this situation would bring that upon my character. I really didn't, Sean. I think you're being too harsh. I'm going to be the player here. I think you're being too harsh, man. Harrigan, you're being too harsh. Sean, if your character spits in the mob boss's face, that I'm considering as an endangering action. Are you sure you want to do that? Whoa. Endangering action. So you're talking like he could kill me and shoot me and I could die. Yes. As a matter of fact, the GM could just say, he will shoot you and kill you. Are you sure you want to do that? Because like some of the things that a game master is doing or can do is be your self-conscious, be your player character self-conscious. Because you as the player may not be considering some of that stuff. But as the player character, got to be the little voice in their head sometimes. Like, hey, if you do this, you know that there's a small chance that he's going to put a cap in your ass and you're going to die. Are you aware of that? Like, that's the little voice in your head. You could squash it, do what you want, but don't say the little voice in your head didn't warn you. At least then they understand the level. At least then they understand the severity, the level of severity, the stakes, right? The stakes, put the stakes. It's all about the stakes. Poker, high stakes poker. High stakes RPG. It might be a thing. High stakes RPG. Low stakes. Maybe that's what it is. This is a high stakes game, right? When we say high stakes in poker, serious business. Serious business. This isn't for everybody, right? Serious business. Come into the back room, like no audience, right? Invite only. Serious business. High stakes RPG. There's a t-shirt. Write that down. High stakes RPG. High stakes GM. High stakes player. Right? $10,000, $100,000, $1 million Annie. Man, we're not playing nickel dime stuff here. Character death on the line all the time. You walk out the door, horse could run you over. BC says, does this boil down to people equate death with losing? Yes, absolutely. For sure. Part of it, absolutely. I lost. Sucks. I didn't think I could lose in this game. You know, sure. Lucas says, session 0, the player should know better, or will. We need more player advocates. You guys are just, oof, as my wife would say. Oof. Jim says, you can go further than are you sure and ask, are you sure this guy can and probably will kill you? Yes, absolutely. The specialized vocabulary from the tweet is fine, but it's nearly really just communicating risk. Yes, which is something we don't always make very clear, and that is the problem. Farty says, I think it's a shock to lose a PC. The GM should give some good thought to what happens from there. Yeah, man. That is such an excellent point. How many times has what happened in our Forbidden Lands game? Make a roll. Oh, you failed? You fall off in a never ever world. And you could hear you could hear a pin drop. Like, everybody stops talking. Shit. So, yeah. Well, I guess I'll roll up another character. Sounds good. All right, let's move on. And Harrigan agrees with Jim. And I agree. That's the deal. It is just making sure communication, the idea, thoughts are clear, interpreted as we convey them, in the context that we convey them. Jim says there seems to be a trend towards mechanizing conversation in RPGs. Let's face it, man. A lot of the problems we have is because we're not communicating something. Something's amok. Something's amok. Harrigan continues, and it especially matters when it's been established in the game so far. Maybe they should know the boss is a bad dude. Maybe. We don't know. We don't know that. We're speculating. We don't know. Like, we don't know if that could have been conveyed. That could have been like, hey, that mob boss killed everybody you know. I spit in his face. Yeah, that's like, hey, hello, McFly. You're not getting this. Farty says, if the player's really upset, maybe it's a good opportunity to retcon what happened. Oh, God, that's maybe. I mean, okay, you really don't die. Someone's on your way. The gun jams. I don't know. That's a weird one to retcon, character death. Harrigan says, and if they don't know that the guy's a bad dude, he might lean in and tell them, do that again and you won't see the light of day tomorrow. This is just GMing. Yes, agreed. Sure, yes. I don't think that's bad either. But, right, just the character, the NPC warns them, hey man, you spit in my face, that'll be the last thing you do again if you do it again. I do it again. Boom, bam, done. You're finished. Like I warned you. Sure. That's pretty clear. Damn it, Sean. I didn't think you'd do it. He told you, do it again, and I'm going to kill you. Wow, damn. Then you got to be careful for Sean writing up another character. Getting all mean and spiteful. Coming back. My new character's going to find that guy. Kick his ass. Your new character doesn't know who he is. Metagaming. Arian says, Jim, yep. About the communication piece, and it stems from bad GMs. VC says high stakes GMDM sounds like a button you should get for surviving a game with Brett. More player advocates. Lucas says, as a player, it's my choice to pick a fight and lose. I am not a plot armored hero. Fair. I don't have everybody named Lucas at my table. But I hear you. I hear you. Plant Kingdom. Hey. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. I think death has become a default GM response because it's often the only consequence that's mechanized in the rules. Yeah. And that's a good point, right? Because, and Harrigan would argue, which he probably does after the fact, but that's, what else can you do as a game master than kill the player character? Right? Put them in prison. I don't know. Harm somebody close to them. Is there ways to make their lives miserable without killing them? Right? John Wick's play dirty. Throw more stuff at them. I don't know. I agree that there are absolutely more things. And that's, but the argument with that would be the consequences piece. People find they equate consequences with death. Not all the time, but say that's kind of the ultimate consequence is my character dies. And some will say the risk reward component, like if there is no, so some of the folks that play more traditional, specifically some of the older games, that character death is a real thing and it's common and people don't care and it's part of the game, is you will act differently in the game. You will play your character differently. Like I said to Brett, when you have save or die, you will play a game with save or die differently than if there were no death. Temples, Star Wars, a perfect example. Temples and Tombs, Christopher Gray's game. Christopher Gray's game, can't die. Tales from the Loop, children. It's written. You don't die. Your characters don't die. Some of these other games, and I think that's kind of what Plant Kingdom's alluding to, is he says, I think death has become a default GM response because it's often the only consequence that's mechanized in the rules. But if you don't have character death, or it does not matter, con game, doesn't matter, it's a one shot, write it like you stole it. Temples and Tombs, Star Wars, Tales from the Loop, it's written in the game, your character does not die. When your character death is taken out of the equation, the style of play should change. Doesn't always, but should change. Why? Well, you can't die. You should be able to do anything. I mean, within reason, right? If you want to make it more realistic, like, I'm going to jump off a 100-story building. The way you would handle it in some of those games is you jump off a 100-story building, but you don't fall to the ground. Like you're hitting different things on the way down, or, you fall 30 feet and onto one of those window cleaning gadget things. Like it's almost it's like, which is it Say Anything? No. Does it Say Anything? The old John Cusack movie where he's like really depressed and trying to kill himself and he can't. I don't even know if that's the movie, but anyways, it's that situation. So you play it, Star Wars, high action. You want the players to get rid of their inhibitions and, drive fast, take risks, live on the edge, spit in the mob boss's face because he's not going to kill you. And then you do that. And then there's a story that's produced out of that makes it fun and exciting. There was a game I was running on Star Wars, and one of the person, like they were in a chase, speeder bike on their left. They're on a transport flying through, it's the speeder bike chase, right? In Empire. Jedi, actually. And, hey, I'm going to jump down on top of the stormtrooper. I'm not sure if that's the smartest thing I should do or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Yes, jump down. If you don't hit the bike and you hit the ground, you tumble for, 20 yards. But do it. Yes, absolutely. Great answer. Why? Because you're not going to die. You might take some damage, sure. You might even go unconscious. I don't know, but you're not going to die. So let's crank this sucker up, right? Let's play some Fast and Furious, and you're going to jump over the Grand Canyon in your piece of shit car. Now, Inheritance says, in retrospect, I love that moment in the Forbidden Lands game came. PC was there, made the jump, missed it, and was just gone. So in the Forbidden Lands game, the first go around, the party, there's a ship floating in this weird space, and down below there's this kind of a plumb bob thing going on, and they shimmy down, and it's in a storm, and wind is going around, and Harrigan's character kind of failed like two or three rolls, and just you're gone. You go into the void of nothingness. Like it's literally just clouds and a storm. There's no ground. It's kind of interplanar. And that's it. Like literally you don't know if his character is dead or not, honestly. And it was you're gone. So you could have just as said, might as well be a character death. And that's what he's referring to. Could I bring her back in a different session or something like that? I mean, as a game master, possibly, because I could say, well, she never literally died. What happens is this, but nobody knows because nobody's experienced it. So, that's kind of an interesting take, right? But, it's hard to say, even with the mob boss. Take the mob boss situation. I spit in the mob boss's face. He shoots you. Boom. You hit the ground. You're unconscious. Now, some might say, oh, I'm unconscious or am I dead? Now, the player's always going to ask because they want to know, like, should I tear up my sheet or are you saying I got a chance? Or are you saying there's a chance? I'm not sure. Mob bosses put you in a roll you up in a carpet and throw you in the back of a car. And the player characters don't know if you're dead or not. Hell, the mobsters might not even know if you're dead or not. GM, at that specific point in time, may not know if you're dead or not. So that may be going to Plant Kingdoms and maybe an option where what else can you do than kill the character outright? Jim says, having been on both sides of the table when it's happened and more than a couple of times, sudden unexpected PC death can make for excellent gaming moments. Yes. Phil says it was a great narrative moment, which would have happened if death wasn't an option at the table, which he's referring to Harrigan, as he's in my group. Jim says, I love the session where my 9th level cleric died and then exploded while the rest of the party made a getaway. So now Harrigan's moved over to Discord. So we have to get things moving again to prompt to come over and comment. BC says, what else can you do to a PC other than death? Throws Delta Green. Yes, there's options. Plant Kingdom says 13 Age has an option where you can always retreat from a combat, taking their fallen with them at the cost of a campaign loss. Example, the endangered person you're rescuing is sacrificed. And another option, that if PCs are taken down by a no-name monster, they're just incapacitated. Of course, they could then be carried off to be dispatched by the Mook's boss. So when the party hits the big battle at the end, and you tell them that no foolin' death is on the table, it actually feels like the stakes have been raised. Plant Kingdom sounds like he or she has got their proverbial shit together. Wayne says, some games like Black Hack don't have character death as the only option. At 0 HPs, you roll on an out of action table. Death is an option on that table. That changes the stakes somewhat. Sure. BC continues to play the other side of the point. In one game I ran, when we had a TPK, we were playing D&D 3.5 maybe. Everyone had their moment of drama. Then I told the thief character, you get punched by this big thug and hear from behind him. You're sitting here in front of me. So that ain't what happened, smartass. Now from the top. And we restarted the battle and I tweaked the combat. No wrong answers, just things to be aware of. Things to think about, really, is what, some of these commentaries, me, other people that are putting out there, it's really just to get you thinking, right? Because what happens is some of us are going to run into this very, very example. And we've probably run into it. We've already handled it. We know how to handle it. It's not a problem in our game. But there's some people that aren't going to know. And they're like, that's not a bad point. Plant Kingdom had a good point. Oh, 13th Age has got something that's in there. Black Hack by Wayne mentioned in the chat. Oh, I probably should look into that. In an effort for people to go, okay, that works. That won't work for me or my group. Keep what you want. Toss what you don't. And, in an effort to make your game a little bit better. Right? Let's move on. All right. Next thing I want to talk about. This is going to be kind of a lighthearted one, right? So let's see. Where's my notes? Okay. Next one, another inspiration from Twitter. Sometimes Twitter can be gold. Sometimes it's just a train wreck. This one. Bear with me for just a moment. All right. It's a meme. It says, when the DM has a very specific odd rule that makes no sense and you're afraid to ask why. And there's a speed limit sign that says speed limit 17, which I think is hilarious. So what the question is by B underscore D&D, BEA, BEA underscore D&D, DMs, what's your weirdly specific rule? What is your weirdly specific rule? Now I'm trying to think of one. I don't know if I necessarily have a weirdly specific rule. I know there's some that I would probably put into place, like if you cannot make a session or we're scheduling, you have to like respond within 2 days or, whatever. I was looking through some of these. They got a lot of responses, and some of them are like awesome and some are just hilarious. So I wanted to go through some of these. DMs, what's your weirdly specific rule? First one, don't consume alcohol at my table. We play virtually, so it's not, make this a little bit bigger for folks to read. Don't consume alcohol at my table. We play virtually, so it's not like driving home is an issue, but it's frustrating when drunk players don't listen to what you're saying or go out of their way to be a pain, And people respond to these like, I remember this one time, or I don't mind people getting drunk at my table. Okay, right? Pretty legit, I guess, right? It goes from that to the next one, which is, I don't allow druids. Now, in my previous, 4 streams ago, we talked about Will on Twitter saying, hey, if you're going to just house rule something for tone, then cover it up in session 0. It's a safety tool, but don't disallow certain things. And I don't agree with that, but nonetheless, that's what came to mind when I heard I don't allow druids. And I have to think that the reason is I have to be much closer to 5e to understand that, but I'm guessing that there's probably some things that the druid does that probably breaks, quote unquote, breaks some games. If I was a DM, it would be no evil or neutral characters unless you've been playing the game for 10 years. And I think you can do it properly. No rerolls. Character build or gameplay. Realistic combat. No shooting through people. Now, I'm not a big fan of the 10 years thing because I don't know if 10 years gets you to the no evil or neutral characters piece, right? I don't know if you playing 10 years makes you more apt to understand that. I don't think it does. Somebody actually corrected him on that and said, I get it. Show me, it would be a show me that you can play an evil or neutral character. Neutral characters are weird. That's a weird alignment. If you ever tried to play a true neutral character in D&D, true neutral, you'd be like, everything's meant to be. It's just a way for some characters to be able to play both sides of the fence. Play a morally corrupt character and an equally, lawful character. Come on. True neutral? Yin and yang? Hey, the plague? Well, it's, it's to maybe clear out everything. Wayne says, I have a good friend who does not allow gnomes at all. Not even in the fiction. FYI, this is because an infamous gnome player's cat pissed on his coat. You know what I would do in that game? I would name my player character Gnome. From the gnome family. Heyo, you're welcome. This one, you can't play yourself. I've seen way too many players get way too upset because they were just playing the fantasy version of themselves, and when something went wrong, they took it personally. Some of these I would never even think of. All right, here's the deal, session 0. One of my rules, you can't play yourself. Like I said, sometimes these things are just gold. I would have never thought of that. Oh my goodness. So many of the people in these replies seem very unfun and lame. Maybe. Doesn't mean you have to take it serious. Gnome Gnome can't miss. Pisser the gnome. I tend to get way more neutral characters than not when running BX or OD&D using the 3 alignment system, says Jim. Neutral. I could do this because I'm neutral. I decide that it's okay. Alignment needs to just go away. Just based on the actions of your character and the morals and the choices that your player character takes can determine the type of character you're playing. This guy, Twitter. You can change build/character outside of combat until the group's first level up. I've done that. Like you can change your character up until like level 2, and then once you're level 2 or level 3, then you got to keep them. That's one I've probably used and I haven't written down, but I have allowed. And most of my rules like these come almost like afterthoughts, right? Hey, Sean, I picked this guy. I thought it would be kind of cool. I'm not really jamming on him. Can I change him? Sure. It's only been 2 sessions. No problem. Some will do session. Some will do level. He says, and for like a decade and a half in our home game, specifically, so none of my play-by-post online games, we had the rule no paladins. For clarification or exceptions, please self-reference this rule. The first one was we have 2 people who are terrible at making characters, like really, really bad. It's been over 20 years. They're not getting better. So we let them fix it after they get into the game. Okay. I didn't get the paladin thing anyway. Less a rule and more a warning. I guarantee that I will never have an NPC use a filter of love on a PC and tell them that attempting to use one on any NPC may have consequences. Like they're welcome to try, but it might end poorly or it might not. Who knows? So now you have to understand what filter of love is. Go and Google it. It's essentially, well, shit, I'll do it for you for Pete's sakes. Filter of love. It's a charm. It's a charm piece. Basically, in 5e, the filter of love is the next time you see a creature within 10 minutes after drinking this filter, you become charmed by that creature for an hour. If the creature is of a species and gender you are normally attracted to, you regard it as your true love while you are charmed. This potion's rose-hued, effervescent liquid contains one easy-to-miss bubble shaped like a heart. So, yeah, I can see why somebody might not let that in their game. And so we'd be like, I don't understand, Sean. Well, let's just throw out a Bill Cosby reference and call it a day. All right. Moving on. Once I point out that the filter is essentially like emotional date rape. Okay, well, we're still on the filter thing. Let's move on. Oh, come on. What? I gotta where is... Yeah, okay, I think I'm in the right spot. All right. Where did I leave off? Okay. Raw, here we go. Got up here. Raw, rules as written. Movement can still trigger opportunities of attack, OOA, if the target being attacked has a 15-foot reach or more. The campaign setting is very eldritch, so a lot of monsters are going to have tentacles or excessively long arms. This also includes human NPCs and NPCs because my barbarian paladin has a 12-foot reach. Yuck. Okay. Fall damage. This is a good one. I like this one. You take 1d6 every 10 feet you fall. Same as normal. 2. If the damage exceeds your con score, your HP is reduced to 0 and you become unconscious. 3. If the damage exceeds twice your con score, you die instantly. So they elaborate for reference. 50% of the time, a fall of 30 feet will knock you unconscious. Knock your character unconscious with a con score of 10. A fall of 60 feet will kill a character with a con score of 10 and will knock unconscious a character with a con score of 20. Already done the math. A fall of 120 feet will kill anyone. All right, cool. Nail that falling stuff down. If I was a DM, it would be no evil or neutral characters unless you've been playing the game. Oh, I already went over that one. Next one. At my table, I employ a rule where if you die in a dumb, here we go, pretty thematic, in a dumb and avoidable way, you lose a level, either on revive or for your next character. It's only happened twice in the years I've used it, and I can't even list my criteria, really, when deciding on the quality of the death. Example, one time my players found a super deep well whose bottom was hidden by magical darkness and found hints that it was a secret escape route for the rich family whose house they were currently living in. Even found hints on how to descend safely. One of my players cast spider climb on himself, walked down the side of the well about 100 feet, still further 50 feet away from the darkness, walked back up to the top, and dove into the well. He splatted, insta-died, level 4 at this point, and lost a level for his new PC. Okay. I've had that happen. Like, okay, character dies, you're not going to start with the same level as everybody else. I don't know if that's fair, but Jim says, I'm considering having alignment in the experimental game I'm planning. It'll be based on what PCs do and will impact NPC reactions, but players won't be aware of it. Fantastic. Keep acting like a villain, get treated like one. But it won't be an ethos the players have to pick up front and have to keep following or else suffer consequences for changing. I like the alignment because of its mythic resonance. Not really, says Wayne. But that's a good point, Jim. Players don't need to know. They got reputation and all this stuff, rapport or whatever. Start doing stupid stuff and word gets around. Like, it could be for anything, not even, good, evil, or good. It could be like, well, your character does a lot of dumb things, people know, or they're very good at combat. You just make some mental notes. That's fantastic, especially when players don't know and things, that's like the consequences. So consequences come back onto them, but they don't know why they keep encountering these things. So that's good stuff. Keep track of that on the side and have it go up or down, white into black or whatever. All right, next one. If you multi-class, every level of each class has to be within one level of every other class you have. This stops dips into a class to get around restrictions or to game from front-loaded classes. Some of these are just like, I want to play 5e and I want to do these cool things. So here is some of the stuff I want to do. And the game master goes, no, you can't. In my opinion, there's, warlocks. Here you go. Have to tell me about their patron. If you're dipping into warlock, you need an explanation as to why you're refusing your patron's offer of more levels. And your relationship cannot be, they don't even know I exist. Then it says, so many of these people in these replies seem very unfun and lame. The worst takes I've seen so far. No evil or neutral characters until you have 10 years of experience. No humans. Pretty much any take relating to counterspell. See, I've skipped. Some of these are like, there's responses to replies. The counterspell one was one. If you copy paste your character build from a min-max website to break the game, then I'm not DMing anymore. The campaign is simply over. I'm telling you, see? It's the style of play. People can only play one character at a time if they are combat capable. And if you swap out to another character, that other character cannot be swapped back to. Extenuating circumstances is withholding. Eesh. Sometimes when you post things like this and you read them, you understand the problems. Like, you know what the problem is. That's not being addressed. It's just squashing it, right? These are GMs that are like, nope, I'm going to solve that problem. Not going to happen. Role-playing objects. I don't have any restrictions besides it has to be related to your class or character in some way. I have players use them when they're in character, so it's obvious for me to know what info is between the players and what they're saying to NPCs. As for in-game rules, I feel those are situational and just make vague rules so there's wiggle room for the players to pull some acid trip tomfoolery. I just use the basic rules from the DM guide and try to make shit as interactive and entertaining as I can for the party. My players have come up with a dozen schemes for harming lycanthropes with silver-ish weapons. Silver-coated weapons, firing silver pieces from slings, punching while wearing 5 silver rings, etc. I've had to come up with rules for all these oddities. My general principle is that if a weapon is not 100% silver, and most silver, including silver coins, is not that pure, then the weapon is at a significant disadvantage in one way or another. Some of these really can make your head hurt too. And you don't know the context. And some of this goes into the main topic, which I don't know if I'm going to get to. I'm going to try to, but that has to do with metagaming. So, silver weapons. Oh, they all hurt, werewolves and lycanthropes. You got to have silver. Do you? Would you know that? Does your character know that? How many times that happens? No retcon mechanics, no block mechanics, especially race roleplay. If you say something and another character gets upset over it, you cannot go back and erase it. If something happens, you cannot just decide it didn't happen / it's not happening. This also goes for challenge sidestepping. None of the players have a ladder and they want to scale a wall. If it's been brought up and solutions discussed, no one can then go, well, let's retcon. We brought a ladder. You can if you're playing a specific game, and it says DM, so imagine it's D&D. But in some games, hey, I spend a token. We got a ladder. Magic missile damage and evocations empowerment interaction, because that came up once. We needed to clarify. So there's now a house rule specifically meant for evocation wizards that come up once every couple years. The last time that I used the specific rule might have been 4 or 5 years ago, now that I think about it. These days, the players I encounter tend to go something else more flashy than evocation, like some sort of homebrews. Okay. I no longer declare my spells like an anime. Simply say they begin to cast, and the player has a window to decide to counterspell or not. Another player may use the reaction to arcana check the incoming spell and inform the counterspeller. This presents an interesting challenge. Is the enemy casting a cantrip, Meteor Swarm? It prevents they cast Finger of Death. I counterspell at 7th level, Conundrum at high level play. Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. It's a cantrip. I counterspell. Oh, I don't counterspell that. They are going to cast Finger of Death. I counterspell! Jim says, I intend to hide all the mechanics from the players in this game, so they probably will think I'm just picking on them at least sometimes. Wayne says that retcon rant is hot garbage. Wow. This is, I'm telling you, man, role-playing games, it's amazing we play this stuff. And it's sometimes when things go well, it's just like, just go to Twitter and read some of this stuff. Oh, man. Well, here's some out-of-game stuff. If you're more than an hour late to the session without warning the group, you buy the pizza or coffee that night. Some people are like, an hour? That's generous. I'd say 20 minutes. And then there's some people who are like, an hour? We shoot the shit for the first hour. No matter what race or class you are, no matter what abilities or feats you have, your character cannot puke on command. I think that's fair. If I asked you to roll a D100 to do something instead of a D20, a 69 is a crit success. Like I said, I thought there were a couple amusing ones. I have 2 golden rules at my table. 1, what's good for the players is good for the DM. If they start using scry and die, so can I. Oh, a little poetry. 2, don't steal from merchants, and they will not sell cursed items. Those 2 rules usually stop a lot of mayhem, but don't limit them too much. Gabe says, but players like that retcon stuff. I've had a group that wouldn't shy from coding everything in silver, just in case. He's talking about the silver lycanthropes piece. Oh, God. We need to get through this so we can get to metagaming, because I think specifically some of that stuff is like, come on, are you freaking kidding me? Metagaming can be a hot button. But there's also some systems that really try to encourage it. Like, all right, you guys talk it amongst yourselves and tell me what you come up with. Like, what's your solution? It's player skill over characters' abilities. And when you get into that, sometimes metagaming's like, yeah, go ahead, man, I don't care. But at the same time, like, we get into these ruts where it's like, hey, I've been playing for 10, 15, 20 years. I own every monster manual ever freaking created, and I know all the monster stat blocks. So I know that, lycanthropes all are, they've got a weakness to silver, vulnerability. Trolls, got to pour some oil on it and light them on fire to prevent them from regenerating. Change all that shit. Light a troll on fire where they gain more hit points. What? That's like cheating. Really? It's like cheating? Is it? The irony. Jim says there is one who is usually also playing Sea of Thieves during sessions, makes my eyes start twitching when he has to be caught up on what's happening. Wayne says counterspell's a hot button in 5e. Gabe says metagaming, another reason. Conan D2, D20 so much. Metagaming works well in that one. There's Gabe, pro metagaming. What? Let's get him! Get him! Phil says counterspell's a GM nightmare. Players will hate it too if GMs use it excessively against them. Oh, here's another one that I'll put on there. Sundering. Like, sundering used to be a big one in Pathfinder. Like, I'm going to sunder his weapon. I'm going to sunder this. I'm going to sunder that. But in GMs, if you did it, oh, man, you want to piss off your player characters? Break all their shit. He's going to sunder your sword. Crank. Your sword's broke. Good luck with that. Continuing, if the die hits the floor, it's a 1. Hey, I like that. I just dislike the sound it makes. Oh, that is hilarious. Plus, having 4 to 5 adults on our hands and knees looking for your special math rock you just hacked off the table derails the momentum. I think that's one I could get behind. Next one. If you want to do non-lethal damage, it has to be either blunt, psychic, or force. You can't blow someone up with a non-lethal ball of fire. That's kind of a no-brainer, I think. If you forget your mini or character sheet, you must use the Abyssal Chicken mini. Oh, the mini of shame. Should be called the mini of shame. I don't even know what that Abyssal Chicken looks like, but whatever. You guys look it up. You cannot start the game as a chicken unless you're going to stay that chicken. Great. Most of mine relate to how magic works in my campaign setting. Divine casters must worship a deity. Arcane casters must have and use a focus when casting spells. 2, no characters may expend more than a single spell slot during a single turn, excluding quicken spells. 3, divine casters require a holy symbol to cast their spells. 4, any character without the appropriate focus, provided in starting gear at no cost, cannot cast spells, including cantrips. This guy, no sorcerers of any kind. The guy says, why not? When I created my world, sorcerers didn't exist yet. Later, when they were added to 3X, the way their magic works completely goes against established lore. How magic works in my game world is well understood by casters. Sorcerers break all that lore. Wow, no exception? There's not one person in your entire freaking world? God, how unfortunate. All right, whatever. Revivify is not a spell available to PCs. It can only be performed in a temple by devoted priests, not adventurers. Clerics can take a level 3 spell, Stasis, that keeps the PC from dying for a week. They have that time to find a temple willing to revive the person. I do this because Revivify makes PC death too meaningless. It adds consequences back to the game. And if the PC, and in my experience, the party, more than the player, really want the character, there's an option. See, you could see some of these rules are getting at underlying issues. Remy. Change up the monsters like rust monsters that consume leather. Yeah, see, now you're thinking. Wayne says, or silver. Or gnomes. Need to try and get into one of Gabe's 2D20 Conan games, Phil says. See a killer GM? Sounds like it. Toilets don't exist. Oh, that's just, I don't know. All right, I don't know if I can. My weird rule is that my players don't get a point of exhaustion if they happen to sleep in their armor. It doesn't sound fun to me to be punished for something I will forget is there. PCs in my imagination are basically cartoon characters. They wear the same thing every day. The exception would be if they are needing to disguise themselves and say specifically they took off their armor. Otherwise, it's a game. Consequences should be a way to make the game more immersive, not a way to punish the player for forgetting or, well, you didn't say it, so... I don't... Oh, that's a... I don't know. It's how realistic do you want to make your game? All right, I don't play the exhaustion role probably near as much. This is 5th edition, man. There's a lot of this stuff, right? Like many of us prefer not to play 5th edition because of some of these details. That's not necessarily true. It's not because of some of these reasons. Some, mileage may vary. But for example, if you sleep in your armor in 5th edition, you're supposed to gain a level of exhaustion. So at the end of the day, when you're about to rest, you take off your armor, which means the player characters are going to be like, okay, this is when the game master brings the big hammer down. I don't have my armor on. So now I go from armor class of 18 to 11 or 12, which is complete butter bullshit. Like, I'm just totally gonna get killed from random boar that walks through our camp. This gonna suck, Sean. Maybe. But then you also don't have to be the game master that puts the hammer down all the time when the characters are completely vulnerable. That's probably the reason, right? That's why players get all up in arms about some of the stuff that comes up. Like, hey, I don't want to take off my armor because now I'm screwed. Now, I got plenty of players. I mean, I went through Tomb of Annihilation. I had one player character, Jeff's kid, Logan, who would not take off his plate armor. And I'm like, all right, dude, every hour, man, you're getting a level of exhaustion. And if you, like at the end, you could die. Nope, I'm not taking off my armor. All right, well, then you got a choice. But you're going through the jungle, like a humid tropical rainforest. And it is torturous. But I also didn't have these things attack him every turn. So his danger level probably wasn't as high as he thought it would be. But he was like, I'm a paladin. I got to wear plate armor and have a freaking 18 armor class. Shit, some of them are ridiculous. Even over 20. What the hell? Meat grinder mode, I would play exhaustion, some of those things. I don't know. I've had to make a personal rain cloud for one of my characters for the express purpose of making sure they can't commit arson. Oh my God. I'm pretty sure they burned down 2 houses and a forest that campaign. It's crazy. Just so crazy, kooky stuff. If a player is later than 20 minutes in the game without warning, I already read that one. Yeah, in one of my groups, this rule is no snacks before the mid-session break. Okay. Here's one. If you fire a ranged attack at an enemy and there is someone, either friend or foe, in the way of your line of sight of them, your target has half/3/4 cover. If you miss, but you would have hit, if not for the cover granted, you instead hit the creature in the way. That's a variant rule in the DM guide, somebody says. So congratulations, you're using a rule in the DMG. If a player makes a verbal statement about a ruling that would go against their character and the party, I say, okay, Dave, sounds good. Oh my God, this guy. Embarrassment damage is a thing in our game. That needs to be on a t-shirt. That is gold there. I would, oh my God, that is too funny. Embarrassment damage is a thing in our game. Oh, man, I tell you. Remy, I'm not thinking, Sean, just listening to you sharing and now showing how far behind I am in the Gaming and BS podcast. It's all right, Remy. All right, guys, in Discord, you don't see this. You got to see it. Not paying attention during combat earns you the cone of shame. This guy is wearing the cone of shame on top of his head. And it says, we're going this way. Exploding Kitten's cone of shame. This. Oh my God, that is hilarious. I would brand that and I would send it out to all the players in the BSer community. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. Did that with a smart-ass player. He wished for the holy hand grenade from Monty Python and counted like movie 1, 2, 5. At 5, I said boom, and he quoted to him, and quoted to him the holy book of armaments. 5 is outright. Okay. No Direction podcast chimed in. In high school, I told the players there were about 17 people in the tavern. The session stopped so everyone could mock me for approximating to such a specific number. That experience is old enough to be married with children in grade school, and yet it still haunts me. No magically summoned horses. No humans. It's a fantasy game. If your fantasy is to be a human, you're weird. No humans in my homebrew world. Huh. The guy's like, what's the default race then? Honestly, my rule is no fetish characters like some ye old hoe house stuff. And if someone wants their entertainer background to be they were a courtesan is fine, but no fucked up creepy crap where they're here to play D&D, not do weird shit. Like I get subtle lewd, but I don't want obscene. Fair. If you're not proclaiming what you are rolling, when you roll your dice, I ignore it. Some players had the awful habit of just sitting there rolling their D20s, rolling for nothing until, oh, hey, that specific roll was a perception check, and it was a natural 20. Oh, God. Who does it? Some of these things are like, who does this stuff? I need more game masters in the BSer community that have these like horror stories. Like, do we have those? I'm just going to keep rolling. I'm going to keep rolling. Oh, you're calling for a check? Oh, wait. Okay, I rolled a 20. The DM rolls the death saving throws. The lucky feat is banned unless you're playing a halfling. And you may take a feat at level 1 as long as it's a feat that doesn't increase a stat. Any attempts to mess with an NPC against their wishes, not going to spell it out, but you all know what it means, results in the table ending and the offender not being invited back. Ooh, okay. Any attempts to mess with an NPC against their wishes? Must be something specific there. Must be that. I don't know. Because I think, don't we all mess with NPCs against the NPC's wishes? They talking about a little sexual assault there, I'm sure. This is half joking rule for one group I used to DM for. No goddamn werebears under any circumstances ever. No summoning werebears. No becoming werebears. And no hunting werebears at my table. Some of us have been emotionally scarred through role-playing games. You roll your death saves privately, so only you know you're dead. You can share the total after someone finds out, but until they do, you're relying on the kindness of theirs to heal you. Of theirs. Really shows who has compassion at the table. See, that's kind of metagaming, right? The group I once played for proved that DM rules can be negated if you have someone who has an uncanny ability to crit success one after the other. Mine is more of a table etiquette rule. If you spend time building a dice tower, instead of paying at least some attention and it falls, your character takes damage equal to what was rolled by your fallen tower. I have one DM that adds 1d4 to any target that is also attacked in melee by another person, effectively lowering all AC by 2.5. I get that fighting multiple people is hard, but this basically voids any AC builds. Only my Blade Slinger with a AC 23/28 is hard to hit. Jeez. Let's switch it up. Let it switch up. Gabe says, these habits are real, Sean. You need to play more often in public gaming stores to see them. Really? I suppose. Maybe I need to. Adventurers League must be a treat. That must be a treat, man. Ooh, I am missing out. Remy says, yeah, when I started gaming, at least one of the players rolled die until he got a desirable result and then tried to apply it to his advantage. Come on. So weird. There needs to be a DM gravity flip rule for when players try to use pre-rolled dice. From now on, low rolls are good. Gabe says, I had a gamer who rolled really little dice, quickly calculated with his hand hovering over them, then would snatch them up, saying, 20! These are YouTube gold. Like, if we took vignettes and just, like, got 4 people and we role played this out and just put it out on the net, the people would, I'd have like 1 million viewers. I don't know. I got to make it happen. I just don't have enough people. Oh, that is hilarious. Roll. 20. All right, you're sneaking. Roll 20. Got my sneak roll. Oh, man. Too hilarious. Anyways, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about today was metagaming. Going back in the back catalog for some inspiration. Metagaming. Let's talk about it. Metagaming. Anyone? Metagaming? Anyone? Wikipedia, let's do it. The most reputable reference website in the world defines metagaming as a term used in role-playing games, which describes the player's use of real-life knowledge concerning the state of the game to determine the character's actions when said character has no relevant knowledge or awareness under the circumstances. This can refer to plot information in the game, such as secrets or events occurring away from the character, as well as facets of the game's mechanics, such as abstract statistics or the precise limits of abilities. Metagaming is an example of breaking character, as the character is making decisions based on information they cannot know and thus would not make in reality. Metagaming is considered unsporting or cheating in a competitive gaming context. All right, all you competing RPGers out there, must be rule number 1, no metagaming. It is generally poorly received as it subverts the emphasis of accurate character depiction based on in-game experiences and backstory that defines role-playing games. Outside of role-playing, metagaming simply refers to players using knowledge or understanding of external factors such as community trends or coincidental events to gain an advantage in competition. Examples. Gathering knowledge. Any action that is based upon the real-life knowledge that one is playing a game. Gaining knowledge from out of character, such as pre-reading adventure guides or watching others play through the same game or pre-prepared campaign. I bought the module, did ya? There was a game I was playing. There was a game I was running. I don't know, it was Curse of Strahd. Maybe it was one of the guys in Star Wars, but there was a game that I was running. It might have been for BSers, honestly. And there was a player where they were just doing certain things where I'm like, really? Like, they would never know that unless they read the actual adventure. So I've run into it. Like, what? Come on. Next one, use an in-world knowledge from a previous played or dead character. That's a good one, right? Oh, I'll roll up my character. I'm going to go after that mob boss. You don't even know the mob boss exists. Your new tune doesn't. In split-screen games, using another player's viewpoint to gather information that one's own character does not know and could not access. So this one happens quite a bit, right? Let me rephrase that. We are conscious of this one happening, and most of us try not to do that, right? You're in the room. The rest of you aren't. You find out this information. Am I in the room? No, you're not. Great. You don't know that. Are you going to tell me? I'm not going to tell you. Fantastic. You're not going to share that information? No. So most of us understand that. Like, I think they're like, you're not there. You don't know that. Problem is, some people won't play it that way. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to pickpocket the ring. What ring? The one that he got in that other room. You weren't there when they took the ring. You don't even know this person has that ring. Come on. Banhammer. Bending the rules. Adjusting a character's actions based on foreknowledge of the long-term intentions of the game master. Oh, Sean's totally going to be doing that. Don't do that. We're going to go the other way. Basing a character's decision on knowledge of the game's mechanics to gain an advantage when the resulting action goes against that character's personality, history, or motives. What? Lycanthropy? Silver? Rust Monster. Trolls. As a form of power gaming during character creation when a player takes flaws or liabilities that they know the game master is unlikely to fully exploit. Hello, Savage Worlds. Thereby acquiring extra creation options without paying a corresponding penalty. We've brought that up on the show quite a few times. What's your weakness? Sean, one of my weaknesses is that I play too hard. I'm a just dedicated player. I just work too hard. What's one of your weaknesses? I don't know. I don't like the color blue. I love metagaming players who choose not to partake get rewarded. Says Gabe. Remy. Depends on the game or game system as well as what knowledge the players are using in game. And I don't think metagaming is always that bad if you've got that type, if that's the type of game that you're playing. Like some of the old school stuff, man, you know, they say it's all about player knowledge. It's like the player skill. Are you a good player? Like they used to have RPGA tournaments. Like we're going to run Slavers. Like I think Against the Slave Lords was a tournament played game. In the back were pre-gens, you'd get them, and then the objective is to get through, survive. Maybe there were points for certain objectives. I don't remember. And I could never understood how GMs ran those games. I mean, I guess you referee them and, you know, you adjudicate the rules and everything, but some of that is up to interpretation. I won't lie, I've metagamed Hargamar into a killing machine. You know, Phil? Knowing's half the battle. And the fact that you recognize that, well, I think we can work this out. Altering behaviors. Using certain types of attack or defense based on the strengths and weaknesses of an opponent of which the player character has no knowledge. Okay, so that applies to the silver. Let's wrap our hands in silver and spill oil on the goblins. Acting on any knowledge that the character does not know and could not learn. For example, applying real-life chemistry to create gunpowder in a pre-firearm setting without said character having any foreknowledge or interest in chemistry or any precedence for its development. Another one, adjusting a character's behavior towards player characters based on real-life relationships with other players. This extends to and includes attempts to engender friendships or relationships and manipulate those of others via favoritism in-game. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Deciding on a character's course of action based on how the game's abstract mechanics will affect the outcome. You know, what we could do this. That'll give us a flank and then a bonus. And then what you could do as a rogue is you could come in after do. So some people will say that is okay in their game. Like you want to sit down and you want to optimize the situation to your advantage, go nuts. Assuming that something that appears to be wrong or unlikely in the game world is a mistake of the game's master rather than something that could be investigated. There are incidences where a game master's depiction of the world is genuinely at fault, causing players to gain knowledge their character should not know. However, it is incumbent on players to not utilize that knowledge for their character's future decisions. And last, assuming that if an item, such as a chest, desk, or bookcase is mentioned by the game master during the initial description of an area, it must have some relevance to the storyline, and immediately searching or examining it, while ignoring other furnishings or objects that are most likely there as well. I didn't know. I mean, I guess I never really considered that as metagaming, but now that it's spelled out in front of me, obviously it'd be like table, desk, bookcase. Those are the only important things to search. Flip the mattress. That's why it's where do you search? Nope. And frankly, maybe every NPC in my world never puts anything in the desk or bookshelf because everybody's going to know that it's probably hidden away around there somewhere. Mattress, always a good one. Oh, man. Is game mastery metagaming? Huh. Wayne. That Wayne guy. Wheels are always turning. Game mastery metagaming. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think, the rules are the rules. I don't think somebody should be punished for knowing them. Or should it be metagaming? You have to have a general sense of what the rules for the game are. Otherwise, it's just, hey, let's get together. I mean, it's like the difference between running a role-playing game with your 2 or 4-year-old and your 20 or 40-year-old. Right? 2 or 4-year-olds, they don't understand rules and things of that nature and all the mechanics that go into things. So it's easy just to kind of sit down and go, okay, we're going to roll a die. They kind of get the die roll. They probably maybe not even counting at that point. Okay, this means it's good, so you have to say something good. Right? They don't know the confines, but there is a rule establishment kind of going on that they may not be aware of. We can't play role-playing games without them. It might be a stretch. Jim says, I think what Gabe loves is using metagaming to collaboratively build a better narrative rather than optimize play at the expense of narrative. But if I'm wrong, I'm sure he'll surely correct me. Phil says, one reason I took talents over skills is due to the significant difference in XP costs. Yeah, Phil, you're Phil, you're min-maxing. That's cool. Whatever. You're optimizing. I'm optimizing, Sean. Taking advantage. So Wayne says, so a PC fighter whose player picks the talents that make them effective is not metagaming, in my humble opinion. I really think that Freely must be aware of that. So metagaming, do you allow it? And have you ever played a game with no metagaming? I think it's almost virtually impossible. The only reason I say that is because we're at the table. We don't tell, sometimes we'll pull a player aside and go, okay, this is what happens. Go in the other room, and you play it on a side. Sometimes we just convey with the hope that the other players don't take those things into consideration if their characters aren't in the room. But at the same time, excuse me, some people will say that there are games where player knowledge is better. And, I think there was one time I was at a con and Alex Kammer was running Bloodstone, The Mines of Bloodstone. And Douglas Niles, who was the author of it, was at the table. And he could barely remember any of the adventure. It's hilarious. And there was something that was going on, and somebody spoke up, and he's like, hey, and Alex like, hey, no metagaming. And I'm sure it had to do with like providing some advice or insight to another player at the table that they probably didn't know. that's also another thing too. Is there players at the table that don't know what to do? Maybe they don't know the rules. One could argue that not knowing the rules, well, it's not metagaming, not knowing the rules, going back to what Wayne was mentioning. But not knowing the rules would get somebody else at the table to say, hey, you shouldn't do that, and this is why. All right, if you do this, there's a rule in the game, blah. Now, I don't necessarily think that's metagaming. Might be coming from another player, maybe from the game master, not so much, because the game master the player needs to be aware of the circumstances and potential consequences, especially if there's rules involved in it. But sometimes it's not always bad. Like, I've seen games where, like, you know, they're planning a heist and they're in front of an NPC. Like, are you guys talking about this in front of the non-player character? No, Sean, we would go off or on the side or whatever. Like, well, okay, maybe we should just, all right, we'll go off. We'll leave now. Or did you really say that while they were there, standing there? No. You don't know that. You don't know that. You weren't in the room when that happened. Oh, okay. The biggest one is the monster knowledge, I think. I mean, that's like, that plagues the hobby. Because we all get to the monster stats. There's always going to be one person at the table that knows all the monsters. And they're going to speak up, or they're going to keep it to themselves, which is fine, but they'll still find a way to leverage it. Troll? Oh, I got to get some oil. Shit. Anybody have any oil? No, I don't have any oil. Do you have any oil? No, I don't have any oil. I think I got a lantern. We will break that over their head. Sometimes game masters don't care about that stuff. And that's okay. Like, there isn't, you know, again, some people think it's cheating. Some people think it's like, hey, it's how you play the role-playing game. Mileage may vary. But I am interested to know if there's been a good example. Like, do you guys really stress whether those conversations are acceptable or not? Like, how much do you squash metagaming? Because there's a lot of components to metagaming. And sometimes it's unconscious and sometimes it's conscious. Bias, like it's, you know, unconscious bias sometimes. Like, I know it's a troll. I go up and stab it. Oh, it healed itself. Okay, great. Whoa, wow. It regenerated, huh? Now does my character know? Yes, your character realizes that this is occurring. Now, some of us game masters have said that. Like, oh, you used flame oil, you know, it's got a vulnerability to fire. You light it on fire after hitting it, and you've hit it 3 times, and there's been little to no effect. Strange, odd. Shit, I'm doing half damage. Okay, Sean, am I doing like 0, or is it hurting them a little bit? When you attack, you're not doing any damage at all. Oh, okay. Hey, guys, don't use edged weapons. Doesn't do anything on them. What are you using? I'm using a sword. Was it magical? It is. It's like +1s, but it's not doing anything. So, yeah, something else is going on. It's probably a demon, probably devil. Probably needs, you know, cold iron. Blah. Oh, shit. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, now we're screwed. Might as well leave. We got to get out of here. There's a big difference between lack of system mastery and metagaming, Remy says. Jim, I'm trying to run a game without any metagaming with regards to the system by not sharing the rules with the players. The players will do a bit of metagaming anyway using real-world knowledge to fill in the blanks about the setting. No idea how well it will work. It could be a disaster. Jim is that guy. He's like a mad scientist in a freaking laboratory coming up with some of this shit. Putting it on the table, you know, crazy eyes and hair all whacked out and He's got a method to the madness. The grand experiment, this guy. I love it. I love it, Jim. Don't stop being Jim. But that is a good point. Like, hey, I don't want... It's interesting when you take more of the rules away from the player characters. What happens? That goes back to what I was saying without the skills. Like, oh, what do I do? You're in a situation. What do you do? First thing a player does is look at their character sheet. Like the answer's written across the character sheet. And that's why sometimes I think like somebody's like, but Sean, why would you just take the skills out of 5th edition? Well, because then they can't look at what... I mean, I was thinking I will take their skills and I will put it behind the screen. And when they decide to do something, they don't know if they're really good at it unless they actually do it. Well, they may have, or they have like something in their mind, right? Because I think some of us know we're good at certain things, or we think we're good at certain things, but we're really not. Like, I think I'm a pretty good public speaker. No, dude, you suck as a public speaker. Public speaking, I'm really awesome. I should have like a +10 in public speaking. Now I say now I'm like going to be conscious of it. But I think it is interesting to remove some of those components. I am really interested in Jim's grand experiment. Like if he runs that game and it's like you are doing certain things, okay, I have a method to tackle those things. There is like some method to the madness. It's just not Jim willy-nilly coming up with certain things, even though I think as game masters we need to be able to do that. Wish I wouldn't have used that example. To determine how to navigate that. And what would be the point, right? Is it the immersion component that we want the players to feel? Crap, now I got that filler word in my brain. Damn it. I self-sabotaged myself. Self-sabotaged myself. Going to 5e, removing the skills. What else? Like, it's metagaming. The challenge of things you put in front of the player group. What if you have a player that's at the table that doesn't know some of the rules? Like, aside from Jim, maybe you take the rules, kind of put them in the back burner, don't get the characters completely tied into them. But, and maybe it's not even the rules. It's genuinely a player that might be new that doesn't know, I don't want to say doesn't know how to play role-playing games, but they're not familiar with what to do on a consistent basis. My buddy's significant other hadn't played role-playing games, and I don't think she devours them like some of us do. I know she doesn't, right? She doesn't go online, buy 50 rule books and read them and never play them and play role-playing games every week. And so there are situations that her player characters put in where she, as a player, genuinely doesn't know what to do. Like, I'm not sure what to do. Playing a dwarf fighter with a lot of armor and a sword, pulling out a bow to shoot something. That's fine. There's nothing saying that she can't do it. But it may be where, hey, you should just run up there, charge, and bonk them in the face. And putting those options in front of player characters like that, specifically players like that, I don't think is a bad thing. It's kind of metagaming, but you're trying to give them a little push in the right direction. Farty says, agree. Metagaming system is not fun for those that are new to the system. I feel like an idiot. Yeah. Metagaming. how do you draw the line with metagaming? I mean, it's easy to sit down at session 0 and say, look, okay, here's the deal. I want to provide a certain experience at the table, and I really want to curtail the metagaming, and I'm just not going to allow it. And if it does come up for whatever reason, I'll bring it up and say, hey, metagaming, right? It's like our safe word, metagaming. Taco. In which case you got to stop. At the same time, there's things you have to ask the GM because you need to get some answers, and that's probably warranted. You need to do that. You need to garner information. And I think a lot of it comes down to, do I know that? Like, I know this as a player. Does my character know this? You know, do I have Volo's Guide? Isn't that interesting? I don't know if you guys knew this. Volo's Guide to Monsters. Volo's like, you know, obviously a fictional character in Forgotten Realms or whatever. And he's, I don't know, some weird author. I don't even know what he's like. Is he a gnome? I don't even know. Anyways, in certain adventures, like the Tomb of Annihilation, they actually say that you could meet Volo, this weird adventurer, and he has a guide and you could buy it from him. And it's the Guide to Monsters. And in the game, if the player characters decide to buy the guide, you bring out Volo's Guide to Monsters, put it on the table, and they have that in their inventory. That's, I mean, knock on 5e or Wizards all you want. It's pretty kind of cool idea where you just, here's the deal, here's the answer, but they have to research it. So somebody would say, well, I got to read it. Yeah. What are you doing sitting around the campfire? I'm going to pull out Volo's Guide to Monsters and read it. Read a little bit about it. And I'm going to read all the entries that have to do with like this type of terrain, something that we may run into. Fantastic. And if they come across weaknesses in the monsters through that play, I wouldn't see anything wrong with it. It's when they don't, right? Oh my God. You know, it's Brett's weird, obscure monsters that come up and somebody, you know, knowing what it is and what have you. BC says you could do that too in the 3.5 with the Book of Vile Darkness and the Exalted Deeds. I haven't read either one, but I will take your word for it. So where do you draw the line? How do you draw the line? Is it okay? Is it not okay? I think we all have this weird gray area that we seem to tackle it, where it's not that big a deal, or you know, by putting the big ban hammer down is going to affect the, I don't know, not affect the game, but affect the vibe, I guess, right? Whenever a game master or somebody like puts the big old hammer down, it seems to like, it's like a record scratch in the room at times. It's like your mom or, you know, it's like your dad who never punishes you, yells at you. No. Whoa. This chair's making a lot of noise. Metagaming. 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 Which one do you see the most? Using the out-of-world stuff? Bringing it into the game? Monster stuff? Player, what about the knowledge of the previously played or dead character? I make a new character. Do I know everything that's going on? I mean, talk about a rewind. Like here, it's like giving the character, hey, just, I know you're new to the group. So we got this VHS tape. Can you just like go into this room here, put in the VHS tape and just watch this. It'll bring you up to speed. It'll tell you, it'll give you like the history of this group and you know, then you'll be fine. NPCs interacting with the player character, only one player character. There's many groups that I've played with recently where they've had those interactions, and then hey, do you share that with the rest of the group? Yep, I do. Okay. I mean, it's that easy. And many that I play with don't covet that information. But there's a lot that do. Like those Twitter threads, they're full of them. Like, that's why GMs are losing their proverbial minds, because players, they get wacky and they do crazy shit. Like, why do you have to be that player? Lucas says, a field guide to Hot Springs Island is a great in real life handout for players. Some of those things can be very handy because it brings them up to speed very quickly without having to like knowledge dump onto the player characters as a game master. Because you're never really going to know what the players really need to know until a player, like, okay, you're on this island. I have Hot Springs Island, but I haven't read the player handout. I haven't read the whole Hot Springs Island. I've read bits and pieces of it. Regardless, my point is, where I'm going is that there are things that they're going to know because they're right on the island. Like, is there a lot of sand? What's the vegetation like? What's the sounds like? Blah, 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 blah. And you just put that in a handout and they can read it and go, here, this is the deal. This is everything you know by being on the island for like 2 days. Without having to, okay, you're on an island, and then, okay, well, is there sand on the beach? Yes. Well, okay. What kind of trees? And do they sprout veg, stuff we can eat off of them? Yes, they can. They can just give them and fast forward all that stuff. So some of those things can come in quite handy. Farty says, I have one player that is always asking, did I hear or /see that? Often he's nowhere near the encounter. Most often I just say no. Sometimes he rolls. It's kind of annoying. Are there any girls there? You're not there. You're not in the room. Farty, that would aggravate the hell out of me after probably 5 sessions if they're asking all the time. Like, I would have to pull that character aside or that player aside and say, look, here's the deal. You got to understand of where you are, and you tell me. And when another character is not in the same room as you, you just have to know that you didn't hear that unless I tell you. And if you want to make a roll, I will ask you to make a roll so that you can determine whether you hear them or not. That's another thing, though. In defense of that player, there are times where a player is in another room and another player. One character is in a room interacting with an NPC. The other characters are outside the room. In in some role-playing games, it's I roll a die, I got 20 on my perception. Can I hear him? Some folks, some GMs are like, I will not allow my player, like in the Twitter feed that we said earlier, like if a player makes a roll, it doesn't do anything. It's null and void unless I've asked them for a roll. Sounds a little harsh, but I think that if you as a game master enforce that in a way that's consistent, like here's the deal. If I want to, want you guys to make a roll, I'll let you know. Okay, sounds good. So we shouldn't roll unless you tell me, yeah, we're in combat. That's assumed. Okay, go ahead, give me an attack roll. Cool. What's damage? All right, if I ask you what damage it is, it's not, but you didn't say to roll damage, right? But I think if there is a small chance, us game masters, now see, some of us will say, there's no way they could ever hear any of that. They're in another room. There's 5 foot walls, 5 foot thick walls. There's no way they can hear them. that's the case, don't make a roll. Like, then you don't have them make the roll. But there's always going to be a player character that thinks that there's always that slim little chance. Which, hey, the ventilation shaft. Who would have known that it would have carried the sound, 100 feet to where you're standing? Maybe. All right, DC 30. I can't get that. Well, there you go. But that can be that's tough. Yeah, that would drive me insane, though. Especially if it's always all the time. Like, you're not there. Let me know where you are. Like, write on a sticky note. Tell the player character, where are you? I'm going to be here. Write on a sticky note. Put it on the table. You're in the room? Got it. Okay, this is what happens. Do I hear that? Remember the sticky note. Okay, go ahead. Sometimes when I game master and there's things that come up like that, I feel like the biggest dick in the world. Like, what an asshole. That's just me. RPG. Want to know metagaming? In the Tomb of Annihilation, I brought this up. And this is one of the guys who I just curse the strat. I'm like, I don't want him in the game. Couldn't understand 5-foot steps. Couldn't understand how to provoke. Couldn't understand why he couldn't go past a certain 5-foot square when there was a combat occurring. There was a room filling up with wine, and he turned into gaseous form and wanted to slide through the cracks of the door. And I'm like, you can't. There's no crack. Well, there has to be a crack, because how would the room fill with wine if there's no oxygen to push out of the room? Like, you can't fill a room with a liquid unless the air gets pushed out of it so that the liquid can fill the space. Well, Mr. Scientist, if you really must know, there must be, in order for that to happen, an outlet for that air somewhere in the room. But it's not where you're standing. I mean, those discussions are like, you just kind of got to go with the flow. Look, man, I am not doing this to screw you over. I'm doing this because it's kind of the deal for this particular room. Everybody had a chance to leave. This person didn't. They got stuck in there. Are they going to die? I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. Play to see what happens. Well, because they feel helpless. They feel that they can't do anything. That's where a lot of player gripe comes in. Trying to help my friend. I'm sitting behind the door. I could turn to gaseous form, but the GM won't let me go through the door. You're not incorporeal. It is sealed. A sealed door. It's actually not a door. It was a concrete block that came from down and above and sealed off the room. And it's literally written in the room's description. So when they do something inside, it triggers a trap and it starts moving this big, huge block down to seal off the room. And then once it's done, then it starts filling the room full of wine. Water breathing. Well, it's not water. Is that metagaming? Did Perkins metagame that? Probably sure as hell did. You know the player characters. They're going to have water breathing. If they're in the room and they have that, make it filled with wine. Because, every room in a dungeon gets filled with wine, not water. Jim says, I asked Gabe, if my character could track the bad guys by smell. That's a good one. Farty. One thing that drives me crazy is when I get the feeling that the player has read the adventure. I can't know for sure, but I get that feeling. I had that feeling I don't know if it was a Star Wars game I ran for BSers. It was just like this one character. I could have swore. God, I don't know. I think it was. I'm trying to think of what I've run. Delta Green? Delta Green. No. But everything I would bring up, they would be like, yeah, so I'm going to do this. And I'd be like, wait a minute. How would they know? How would they know to do that? It's so weirdly creative to tackle a certain objective. I couldn't it's driving me crazy. I don't remember. It's got to be. I don't think it was my Curse of Strahd game, and it wasn't Forbidden Lands. It was like a one-shot type of game. And I've played, like, there was one game that I ran. I think somebody else admitted to playing before, but they were like good. Maybe was it Hobbs? Somebody was like, I think I've played this scenario, and then I realized it like a quarter of the way in. And that's why I, didn't interact very much, because I tried to lay in the weeds. Lucas says, that's why I alter my games a bit in response to Farty. Gabe says, it couldn't have been my SW character, Star Wars character, Sean. Refra walked right into every trap because Gabe was in one of my Star Wars games. But I think I ran, it was like 3 or 4 games. And I thought there was one with one person who kind of knew certain things. And I think it was like, oh, God, I can't remember. Doesn't matter. 3 of Us, Mothership, had the Dead Planet book. That I think it was Jim. Oh, now that you bring it up, Jim, it might have been the Mothership, Dead Planet. But those guys were good. Like Jim and those guys. I mean, and that's the thing. So I know Mothership, there were like at least 3, probably, like he said, 3 or 4 people that had Dead Planet. I was running Dead Planet. I think one person read it, or part of it. I don't know if Jeff Go did or what. But it was played well. Like, you would not know. And frankly, it went like outside the book. I just, went this way. But it wasn't that one. I don't think it was. And frankly, even if you tried to, it wasn't going to go that route, because you guys ended up on Planet side, and the whole part of what I put in there had nothing, parts of it, but not. Like I'd said to everybody at the end of the game, and they told me that they had owned it, which was nice. Hey, I own this. I haven't read it, or I read first half. Okay. And they all played well. They didn't use any strange knowledge from the adventure. But I told them at the end, like, hey, if somebody says, hey, I want to run Dead Planet, play it, because I didn't really run it by the book to some degree. I mean, I think they're going to see like some similarities, but yeah, Curtis having a conversation with the head in a bag. That was maybe just a melon. Yeah. Anyways, Call of Cthulhu game? I can't remember. It's going to drive me nuts. Metagaming. You put the squash down. Do you have a lot of players that do it? Certain types of attack or defense based on the strengths and weaknesses of an opponent. That's why one thing I would do is probably buy the Tome of Beasts, Tome of Horrors, and use all Wolfgang stuff for adventures. Wolfgang, Kobold Press. Because there's enough newness in those that you could throw them in front of the players. They're not going to know. They may, but the likelihood of hey, I memorized all the monster manuals since 1983. And that's why a lot of folks like and appreciate Dungeon Crawl Classics, because I think there might be a small amount of monsters in the back of the rule book, but when you run into that game, you're probably not going to have a knowledge of what they're about, what their weaknesses are, what their strengths are. Thanks for joining, Jim. Have a great rest of your weekend. I think that would be the big one. The monsters, especially in fantasy, obviously. I know this is gonna, we're gonna need to do this, we're gonna need to do that. Vampires. Would I have holy symbols? Oh, the inviting of the vampire, Curse of Strahd. That was kind of a trope. I think they put in there, like the vampire can't come into the house unless they're invited. And I'm like, I'm gonna just nuke that. They're just gonna go in the house, period. If they can get in the house, they're gonna walk in the house. Invited or uninvited. Because some of those things, I want the characters to shit their pants. Like, well, I know this. Rust Monster, right? We were going back to the Rust Monster and somebody said, let him eat leather, right? Everybody's going to know the Rust Monster. Oh, don't hit him with anything metal. They're going to rust. Have it eat, dead flesh, leather. That's what it does. And then see your player characters crap their pants. What? Yeah, it dissolves. Farty, have a good weekend. Search in the room, desk, chest, bookcase. Yeah, that's where everything's hidden. They're tropes. They get to be tropey. Again, something I'd always love to do is write the tropiest adventure that you could possibly write. And of course, it would have to be for fantasy, because nothing's more tropier than fantasy. Y'all meet in a tavern. Of course you do. Of course you do. Somebody walks in, say my whatever. And part of that would be, you got to go to an office with a chest, desk, or bookcase. And of course, they find the stuff in the chest, desk, or bookcase. And when you die, you just show up. You look like a worthy adventurer. Acting on knowledge that the character does not know and could not learn. For example, applying real-life chemistry to create gunpowder, or real-life physics on, hey, if you have a lot of fluid that's poured into a container that's sealed off, that air has to go somewhere, so you're not going to be able to fill it with liquid, and then I should be able, if I can, then there's an airspace, and I should be able to turn into gaseous form and just slide into. No. Or making, like they say, gunpowder in a pre-firearm setting, because you're going to go off and get all the chemicals that's needed for it and then go in your laboratory and create it. Nope. No way. Bending the rules, gathering knowledge, and altering behaviors. Min-maxing, power gaming, twinking. Yeah, making tweaks to monsters are a big deal. That's why I would just use Cobalt Press stuff. Find out that if it's done by terrain and CR, okay. You run into this thing, describe it to him. Oh, it's got to be a ghoul. Got to be a ghoul. Probably a ghoul. Mummy? Probably mummy. Undead. It's got to be undead for sure. And if it's undead, well, Pencil Mage. Line in the weeds. Good to see you. I know this is a bad take for some, but I will take away player agency if I know their character would have acted in a particular way during play if that player does something because of obvious meta. Yeah, that's gonna bring attention to some people for sure. And I'm guessing that's kind of the deal, right? With your running games, probably for your home group, I'm guessing, right? So it's probably very, very understood. We know it when we see it. Sometimes it can really, really be that, crawl on our side. Crawl on our side? Is that right? But I'm also curious to find out if people are like, no, man, metagaming, I'm cool with it. Min-max, hey, that's the deal. Us versus them, that's cool. I'm doing down with that. They want to know all the monster rules, that's cool. Because now I'm the game master. I can just create my own rules for monsters. Or choose different monsters, which I think is good, right? It spices things up, changes things up. They can, once they learn who the monster is, go fantastic. They can maybe gather the next time that they run into them. But that's through play. And that's the problem with metagaming, right? It's not through play. Yeah. Pencil mage, putting the big hammer down. But that's okay. That's the style of play that your players are well aware of. And sometimes I think players, like genuinely, they might forget. I don't think, sometimes there are players that genuinely, Brett has a group that has certain people in it that will specifically not play in a specific way because they know that's not their player character. I think he's voiced Lenny has done that. Like, I know my player character would do this, or I want to do this, but I know my player character would not. So I'm going to play it that way. And if that means that they get killed, well, so be it. But I also know that Brett has players that are not like that. They're very, optimizing and want to know things. And, that's always a challenge. That's the thing. You're going to get different players that do different things at the table, where one's going to go with the flow, and that's the deal. And then the other one's going to be like, I know that's a freaking rust monster. Statues in a room in different poses. How many of us are going to be like, there's a freaking Medusa in here, or there's going to be, a displacer beast. So I'm not looking anywhere. I'm like moving, but I'm not. I don't have my eyes open. Well, it's not without maybe some justification. I don't know. Maybe sometimes these adventurers may see stuff like this, or it's just strange or odd. Like, who would carve that? That looks like a person that's literally, like, what amazing artwork. Like, it looks like they were literally running and were frozen in stone. Huh. I didn't think somebody could sculpt such capture the essence so well. That's good role playing. Does that mean they wouldn't know that there's something that might have turned them into stone? Maybe they heard tales. I mean, fantasy's weird. They got freaking fairy tales and lore and things that float around. Some of them may not be true. Some of it might be like spot on. I remember there was this thing that they talked about, a woman, snakes in her hair, that if you met her gaze, it would turn you to stone. That was the curse she had put upon herself, put upon her by somebody else. But we know when it's like, take it too far for sure. You're like, what are you doing? So how do you handle it? Do you have like specific rules in your games for metagaming? Gabe says, I'm cool with it. I'll write something specific to Conan in the forums. What is the big definition you're referencing, Sean? The big definition for metagaming? Gabe. Remy, see you later. Have a good one. Thanks for joining. Good to see you. Have a good weekend. It provides a different style of play too. Like I would, running a game, no holds barred. Like, what does that look like? Sometimes I think we understand what metagaming is, and then there's sometimes where we do it inadvertently. But if you just said, hey, here's the deal. I'm going to run a tournament. You're going to give, here's an adventure. I'm going to adjudicate the rules. Either rules as written, or it's going to be in the moment. Maybe wrong or right, but we're going to go with it. The goal is not to stop play. But if we're going to go, you can't do the, hey, I'm in a room, I get that information, unless you pass it along to the other characters. The other alternative is you don't give anybody but that single player the information, and what that player does with it is up to them. Now, I think at the table there's that underlying this took place, but there's times where I think of doing a online game where you have a private chat channel for each and every player. So something happens to only a specific player, then you give them that info, and you don't. As the game master, you genuinely sit back and you only react to the players when they ask you something specifically, an out of character question, right? How much do you immerse yourself into the role play component and not? So for example, if I play a role playing game, I try to be in character as much as possible. Even if I have a question in the game, I could try to do it within the game. Like, I'm thinking to myself, did I ever hear anything like this? I sit and ponder, and look into my mind and think, have I ever heard a tale about this woman? Or have I ever heard a tale of people being turned to stone? Because it looks like that's what's happened, but I don't know for sure. Could be just very rich sculptures. I don't know. Triggers the game master to say, no, you have not. You can't, and nothing comes to mind. Or GM rolls the dice and then conveys the information to the players or the player character. Out of character, want to ask you a question. Okay, go ahead. Like full immersion. Not LARPing, but say the party splits up. You go here, you go there, you go there. It's hard to manage. But you could, what if you muted half the party and you just talked to the one person and you told them the details, unmuted, and then came back? Does that player character come back and tell the rest of the party? If we do it at the table and you're just said, you guys aren't there, you don't know this, I talked to you, okay, let's continue play. The rest of the players are going to be like, well, are you going to tell us what Sean just said? The GM just said? Yeah, I tell you. But I know some players that just forget. Like, you're at the table, so they just assume, I just assumed you guys were there. Right? Because we get mixed up with the space. I mean, that's one reason some people like tactical play and maps, putting down tokens. No, you're not there. You're like, look at the table. Your characters are outside of that room. Oh. Okay. And then also through conveying some of that information, you get the telephone thing going. Oh, this one goes. I mean, I've done that purposely in a game. All right, why don't you show up around 8 o'clock? 8 o'clock? Yep, okay. I call another player character. Hey, Gabe. It's Hendrix. Hey, what's up, Hendrix? Hey, I need you to be at this club. Okay, cool. What time? 9 o'clock. I've literally had a player look at me like, but the GM said 8. I go, yep. You just said 9. Yep, 9 o'clock. Okay, sound good, Gabe? Yeah, sure. Yep, 9 o'clock. Sounds good, Sean. I'll be there. I show up at 8. Gabe's character shows up at 9. Hey, you're late. You told me 9 o'clock. You're late. I've done that. Feed them misinformation. Now that gets tricky. Huh? You convey to the person what happens. As the game master, this is what's occurring. Lie, truth, whatever. That's what your player character has taken in. Sounds good. If I say that stuff at the table, and these three over here, you're not there. Now, most people will say, okay, come with me. Gabe, come with me. All right, here's the deal. This is what happens. Okay, good. All right. Go back to the table. We pick up things. Great. Gabe comes back, conveys the information to the other three characters, whatever that may be. Truth, lie, whatever. Embellishment. That's good stuff. What sucks is when you do it at the table. Everybody hears the one story. Gabe embellishes or changes it. The other characters are like, is that what you tell us? Yeah. Oh, so you're lying. I give you a die. Detect lie? Do I detect perception? Like, it just sucks. And that happens all the time. Well, I'll outright lie to you. I don't tell you anything. Or I don't tell you the truth. Oh, hey Sean, can I check that? Perception. Do it online, it's even tougher, right? So how do you do that? You get chat channels only specific to those. Can mute everybody except that one. That would be nice. That's where a VTT would be handy, I think. Not even a VTT, just a way like, I'm going to mute everybody else but them. And then I'm going to convey the information, and then I'm going to unmute everybody. And then the character comes back. Yep. And then that person conveys what they want. But they said this. Yep. It's not true. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, been on for a few hours now. I think I'm going to wrap it up. Rules. Went over the endangered. What'd she say? Endangering actions. Points of no return. Try it. See what happens. See what happens if you try this. See what happens if you do that. What's the one weirdly specific rule? I'll put links down below to these if you want to reply on Twitter. And then, of course, the article, the Wikipedia for metagaming. Get your thoughts on it. Share it. How you tackle it. How you let it go. But I want you guys to have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks for tuning in. If you've found any value whatsoever in this 3 hours, yes, 3 hours. If you've been here for the long haul, thank you very much. Do a little like action. Make sure you subscribe. I want to thank everybody that tuned in on the Discord. And here on YouTube. Thanks for being part of the community. And remember, be a positive force in the tabletop RPG hobby. See ya.